my friend.
All right. Okay, so we're recording this, guys, because I've got a lot of people that ask if it's recorded, and I forget, and then I can't share it with them later. So I'm going to record this. But feel free. I mean, I want this to be a conversation. This is just a dog and pony show, is all it is. I wish I could, get your hands on this gear, but I can't very easily. However, I've been known to drive this thing to Boston. I've driven it to New York a couple times so that people could experience the technology. And so if you're interested in having a demo like this in front of your team, or if you're interested in borrowing the gear for a week or so, let me know, and we'll find a way to get it to you. And we can find other ways as well. All right, so where's my presentation? Here it is. All right, so all right, so here's the first thing I want you guys to know, and this is really my talking point to be able to get this point across, is Nutanix is not hardware. Nutanix is software. It's software that comes with a storage solution embedded into it. If you want, and in a lot of cases for Citrix this makes a lot of sense, it also comes with the hypervisor that is fully usable in a Citrix world. And that's the Nutanix Acropolis hypervisor. But Nutanix is software, and the reason why I feel comfortable saying that is because you can go out and you can download the free edition for up to 4 servers, 4 nodes, called Community Edition, and you can't get hardware support with it, obviously, and you can't get full-time technical support with it. However, there is a community forum. My point here is Nutanix is software, and for up to 4 nodes, it's free, and that's what kind of reiterates the fact that it is just software, and they can give it away, and that's where Community Edition comes. So if you go down this road, you 100% should take Community Edition and put it on a single server, or put it on up to 4 servers and play with it. And what I really like about this part of the story is, a lot of you guys are Citrix admins or other type of admins, and in more often than not, I mean like 95% of the time or higher, you don't have a true lab environment to play with. Well, what Nutanix Community Edition would allow you to do is to take Nutanix and run it in production on, $100,000 or $1 million worth of hardware, but then you can take the same solution and use the free software and put it on up to 4 Intel NUCs, and you wouldn't have the same hardware in your lab you have in production, but everything else would be the same. So the software from the hardware stack up could be exactly like you're running in production for $1,000 or a couple $1,000. You can have a really working lab environment that matches your production environment, and that at that point, organizations don't really have an excuse not to have some type of functioning lab. I mean, if you can't spend a couple $1,000s to have a functioning lab that matches your production environment that closely, that's kind of a problem. So I love the fact that it's software-driven, software-defined compute, and I love the fact that you can get a hold of it so cheaply and actually have a true lab environment. All right, so a little.
And on that, hey Andy, on that front, I'm also posting in the chat window the links to download and get access to the Community Edition, as well as our test drive site, which will allow you to spin it up in the cloud for 2 hours at a time. So if you want those links, they'll be in the chat window.
Okay, great. Hey, Jonathan, feel free to interrupt me. I'll try to take a breath every once in a while. I know some of us IT guys like to just talk, right? So just talk over me if you have to, and I'll stop.
No worries.
And that's the same for all you guys too. If you have a question, just don't. You're not being rude. I'm being rude, right? Because I don't stop enough to let people talk. So if you have a question, throw it in the chat window, or just start talking, and I'll hear you and I'll stop. All right, so a little concept terminology here, a thought process here. A lot of people, including Nutanix, and this is what they did to me in the beginning, will show you the finished product, right? They'll just pull it out of the oven. Here's the cake. Here's what it looks like. Here's what the meal looks like, and they don't either have time or the desire. In a lot of cases, it's time. In some cases, it's desire to show you all the pieces that went into making this food. Well, in this case, you guys are seeing the whole thing. The only thing you didn't see was the 15 minutes it took for me to get that gear out of that box. So somewhere along the way this morning, 30 minutes ago really, I took this factory reset device, just like it came from the factory, out of that box and put it on the table, plugged it into that laptop, which is my lab, which is my Zen server, which runs on that lab all the time, plugged it into a top-of-rack switch, and stuck it on the table here, powered it all up. And so what I'm getting at there is you guys are going to see this, right? You're going to see us from out of the box to production, roll this thing out in front of you in a couple hours while we talk to you at the same time. And so there's going to be parts where I make mistakes. There's going to be parts where I turn my back to you and jump on my Mac to do a couple things. But this is the real thing. There's no hidden stuff here. You're seeing that box go from you're seeing that gear go from out of the box to up and running right here in front of you, just like it's sitting on the loading dock now, and I'm going to rack it, stack it, and have it up into production in a couple hours, which is game-changing and revolutionary in this space. Every time I pull up the slide, I realize I got to update it. And Jonathan, send me the updated version of the slide. It's out of date. But the point is, Nutanix isn't a fly-by-night company. They've been around for a while, since 2009, and there's a whole lot of people working there. It's probably the fastest-growing technology company. Go ahead. I don't know if that was somebody trying to speak or just feedback on the line. But anyway, so Nutanix has been around for a while. Here's the story. Go ahead.
I was going to say, Andy, I'm only seeing you. I don't see any slides yet.
Man.
Same here.
Yep.
There
It's
it goes.
really out of date, but I'm glad you put that up there. I can share the new numbers just vocally real quick, and I can send you the updated ones if that's cool.
Yeah, I mean, we're all technical guys. We don't really care other than the fact that the company's for real. But, Jonathan, what are they?
5350 plus customers in 100 countries. 2,500 plus employees, so that should round it up. That was as of January 31st of this year.
Yeah. Okay, great. All right, just so, because I'm an idiot and forgot to start the slides, let me do this real quick. So, software-driven community edition, that was the first slide. It's all about software, and you can get your hands on it for free and build a real lab. We don't pull a cake out of the oven fully done and try to show it to you. We pull it out of the box, and you get to watch us build it and spill some food on the floor and make mistakes, but these are mistakes that you might make, so we want you to see those mistakes so that you can go and do this yourself and have some reassurance that you're doing things the right way and a little help along the way. All right, so here's the story. Somewhere along the way, Google realized that it was going to have to build its own data centers. They found their way into a Yahoo data center, and what they found in the Yahoo data center was old-style thinking that wasn't scalable, wasn't cost-effective, wasn't going to go anywhere. And then when they went and saw or heard or talked about or whatever they did, like Amazon data centers, they saw new school way of doing things. They saw web scale, which is the idea that you got to build data centers differently if it's going to scale and be cost-effective. And what's happened in this space is this technology has worked its way down to the private data center, your data center, so that you can do what Amazon's doing, because the guys who did the Google data centers are now selling this product called Nutanix, and it's a hyper-converged technology. And we're going to go into detail here in a few minutes, but the idea is this. The old way of doing it, the way you guys probably do it in a lot of cases now, is kind of silly. I mean, the idea that we have a couple servers hooked up to this big expensive SAN, that those servers and that SAN's best day is the first day you buy it is bad. And the fact that it costs so much, and if you're going to, let's just take virtual desktops as an example. If you're going to virtualize 1,000 virtual desktops, but this quarter or this year you're going to virtualize 200 of those, you shouldn't have to buy enough gear for the 1,000 today. You should be able to buy what you need and then grow that into the 1,000. But the traditional market or the traditional concept, you had to buy as much as you thought you were going to need, and you don't really know what you're going to need, so you have to overbuy. But in this case, we have web scale, which allows us to buy what we need, scale it up, scale it down, make it faster, move it around. That's what this is all about. So let's talk through that a little bit. So the traditional way of doing things is kind of like this. And we have this traditional three-tier architecture where we have servers, we have storage, a storage device, and in the middle we have some kind of storage network. And I'll tell you guys my story, my very first story, the first time somebody talked to me about a SAN. There was a company that came in and they told me about this SAN concept. This is like in 1999. And they talked to me about a SAN, and I was all excited about how SAN was going to change everybody's life and how it was going to be great. And I went and sat down with my boss and told him about it, and we talked about the numbers, and we talked about how much this layer was going to cost. And I didn't think that was going to break the bank, and so I proposed that to him. And I already had some of this, but the problem is I didn't have the HBAs that go into these things, and I didn't have this at all. And it was a situation where, in my case, this was going to be so expensive, the storage network piece, that it broke the deal on this whole thing. So this is like 1999, 2000. So my first SAN story never happened, and we went back with direct attached storage. But since then, there's been some things that have changed. A lot of people have storage networks, or the storage networking involved in this solution now is IP-based and copper-based and Ethernet-based. And so a lot of people have been able to architect and implement, this part of the story, the SAN piece of the story. And so somewhere along the way, some folks got the idea that, hey, if we make this a value meal, like you have at McDonald's, if we take our solution, including the server, the storage network, the storage, and even the hypervisor, and stick it in this big rack thing, we can charge them a whole bunch of money, and we'll have this converged architecture, and it'll be the same stuff, just like if you go to McDonald's, you still buy the same hamburger, and it's still the same fries, and still the same drink, but we'll put it in a value meal, and it'll have more value to the folks. And there is one piece of that is true. You do have the ability for all this to be supported by one company or one support desk, and that there is value in that for sure. But really all it was taking all the old stuff, throwing it into a bucket, putting a name on it, and that's where we come up with the term converged. So some of you guys, anybody on the, after I put it down so bad just now, does anybody on the call here have a converged solution like a FlexPod or a vBlock in their data center? And you might not want to say now that I talked it down. And at the time, it seemed like a great idea. But the truth is, it wasn't game-changing or revolutionary. It was just the same stuff, just rebranded. And a lot of folks, and maybe you guys are some of these, and if you are, it'd be awesome if you said it. You went down the route of looking at a converged solution, only to realize that it was just the same thing rebranded, and you didn't fall into that trap because it was just the same stuff branded and stuck into a rack the way somebody wanted you to have it versus the way you really wanted it. But nonetheless, all this is important, but what is really important is this piece here, which is the application, which is what runs on top of all that. So if we go forward, the idea of what hyperconverged is the idea we take all this vBlock type concept, and we stick it into some type of super converged, what's called hyperconverged technology. And we're going to go into details in a few minutes on how this works, but then we can just linearly scale this out. So literally, I can replace what's over here on the left with a handful of boxes that are software connected to each other, and I can get the same solution, and it really is game-changing and revolutionary. It's not just repackaging the same stuff in a different package and trying to sell it to you. And then we still have the concept of the hypervisor, which is needed in order to make all these things come together and function as a holistic unit. But what Nutanix did, I think about 2012, is they took the hypervisor piece of it, and I want to be very clear here. You can run the VMware hypervisor all day, every day on top of Nutanix. You can run the Hyper-V hypervisor all day on top of Nutanix. You can even run the Citrix XenServer hypervisor. But you don't have to, and what I mean by that is they put a hypervisor into the solution that comes with it as part of the solution, and so you can choose, and specifically as a Citrix admin, which I know some of you guys indicated that you are, the hypervisor that comes with Nutanix, and I'm going to use it here in the demo, it's great for what we're going to do here. For a Citrix admin or a specific application that you're publishing or making available, either Citrix or not Citrix, it is a fantastic hypervisor for that. Now, can you run your entire data center on it? Absolutely. Do you have certain policies and procedures and third-party products in your data center that might prevent that? Maybe. But the idea that these guys have packaged all this together in a game-changing type of technology and included a hypervisor that is very capable and continues to get more capable on a daily basis makes this such a great solution. And I don't know, I think it was Bradley a minute ago. Bradley, tell me about SimpliVity. Do they have their own hypervisor at this point? I don't know their product all that well. I know of it, but not.
They do not. They do not. It's only VMware at the moment, and they're supposed to release Hyper-V by the end of the year. I think it's in beta already.
Yeah.
We're actually thinking about using the Nutanix hypervisor because we're splitting off a company infrastructure-wise, and so we have a greenfield, and we're actually going to start out with VMware so that we can do the migration and then convert over to the Nutanix hypervisor to save some money.
Yeah.
I love VMware, but it's expensive.
So I wish this shows how either passionate I am about the space or how silly I got excited when when you said that, because I mean, what I just said is exactly reiterated in what you said, and the fact that these guys are in tune enough to know that a very capable, competent hypervisor included in the stack makes a big difference to companies and allows you to do things differently. That's huge.
One of the key features was the ability to start out with VMware, do a conversion to the Nutanix hypervisor, and then if we needed to, we could go back to VMware.
Yeah.
Just one of the caveats was you had to start with VMware in the beginning, then do the conversion process. But that kind of alleviated management's concern about using a newer hypervisor.
Yeah, I've had that happen a couple times. Hey, Jonathan, this topic's got to be near and dear to your heart. You have any comments?
I think, just the biggest thing is that when you look at all the hyperconverged players in the market, I mean, the hypervisor, to me, number one, is being agnostic with us is probably one of our biggest, my most proud things, right, is that, pretty much, I mean, SimpliVity's had it, and I don't mean to bash SimpliVity at all, but SimpliVity's had it on the roadmap for 2 years. I mean, and, to add Hyper-V support and KVM support and stuff. So, I mean, I don't put a lot of weight in that, but we've been doing it in production for a very long time. So, to me, just keep that in mind. Like, we don't want to force your hand on not just, not just the hypervisor, but we don't do it on hardware either. So we can get into that, at some point if it makes sense. But choice is, kind of front and foremost on like everything that they do at Nutanix, So.
Yeah. The analogy that comes to my head when I think about this is it's like buying a car, and you get the choice of a car that is either a hybrid car that can use battery and gas at the same time, or a car that's completely electric, and it's all in one thing, and you as a consumer get to have this thing that can be either or depending on what you want it to be. Just extremely revolutionary and thoughtful, right? I mean, obviously Nutanix is doing it because it's good business, but I've wanted a commodity hypervisor for years. I've been talking about that for years, something that I could just do what I want to do with, and if I needed the other guys, I could bring them in, but I could just run this commodity one as well.
Hey, Andy, also we found out about SimpliVity was that they were acquired by HP early this year. So probably going forward, they will only support HP hardware. So
yeah,
that's something else.
All right, so I'm glad you brought that up, Manrique. It's a great time to address this. So I've said several times that Nutanix is software, and it really is software. But they do ship it on their own set of commodity OEM hardware, so that you have this this concept where you can easily upgrade it, you can update it. I don't know if you guys are like me, but I've spent hours and lots of late nights trying to cross-reference hardware compatibility with software compatibility to do upgrades. And with Nutanix, and you guys will see this in a few minutes, I'll be able to click 1 or 2 buttons and I'll be able to upgrade the whole thing. Now, in addition to the ability to buy it on Nutanix hardware, since it is software, they have agreements with Dell to sell it on specific Dell hardware models. They've got agreements with Lenovo to sell it on specific Lenovo models, and they don't have an agreement in this case, but they will support you running it on Cisco UCS C-Series gear. Obviously, Cisco doesn't want you to do that, but Nutanix wants you to do that, and they'll support you on that. But they do, at least at the moment, limit it to a certain set of hardware platforms, and that should give you a peace of mind that you can get in that ecosystem and grow it, and also update and maintain it without having to go too far off the reservation. Now, having said that, Jonathan, any changes coming in that? I love the fact that you guys have your own hardware. I love you support a certain set of hardware, but I also know that it's software, so you could extend it out past the hardware that's currently in play.
Yeah, I mean, anything like that would be way higher up the pay grade than what I am. But I do know I would expect more of that, like you said. I think the UCS stuff is really catching hold. We've got 3 customers in the state that's already chosen that path within the last month. We have a compatibility matrix of Cisco hardware. In that situation, you call Nutanix for support. And we have we've actually in 5.1, which is supposed to drop possibly today. I don't hold me to that. We also introduced B-Series support for existing B-Series implementation on Cisco. So, yeah, so just more and more is going to continue to happen with that. But, the choice part of it is awesome. And it keeps it helps to keep every hardware vendor honest. It really does.
It does, and I like the fact that the stance is we're going to do it a conservative approach, and we're going to pick the ones we want to work with and that kind of thing versus, just trying to say, hey, I'll run on anything you want to run it on as long as you buy the product. And that's, anybody who'll sell you anything you want, I kind of hesitate to trust. All right, so let's.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, it's back to that iPhone-like experience, right? Yep. Or that, it's controlled to a degree so that you have this experience that you're super excited about. And
yeah,
everyone I know have been that way about it. So
I don't know about you guys, but I'm not an Apple guy, but I do have an iPhone because I want something that just works, and I don't have to worry about whether it's going to work or not. Same story here. All right. Okay, so here's what the gear looks like, some of it, and we're going to talk through some other options here in a minute, but that's basically what I have on the table here. Behind me, I actually have a 1000 series. That's a 3000 series. And what this is this block, and we're going to go over the hardware in more detail, but it's a block that is basically shared sheet metal, shared power supplies. And I say shared, it's not actually shared. It's just where they live. They sit in there and they connect to dedicated resources. So this is the back side of it. This is what you see on the table is the back side of it. The front side of it's the drives. And each of these server nodes are connected directly to a set of drives that they connect to that allow the machine to have storage I/O. Here, let me just do this. So let me play this video for you, and I'll talk through it. First, let's mute it. All right, so here's what the gear looks like. And I always have a hard time because it goes at a different speed than I talk. But if we remove the front bezel, we'll see that the gear behind me has a set of SSD drives that are connected directly to each node in the box. So they don't share the drives. Each one has its own set of drives. They also have a set of spinning drives. So let me pause here for a second and talk about this. So you can buy Nutanix, which is all SSD now if you want. But for a lot of workloads, a hybrid approach of some SSD with a second tier of slower spinning drives makes a lot of sense from a cost-effective standpoint. Now, as a lot of you guys know, SSDs are getting more and more cost-effective, but they still cost more. So we'll go over in a few minutes the tiering approach, but that's what this is showing, that each of these servers, each of these nodes, is what they're called, has a set of SSD drives that it has access directly to and a set of spinning drives that it has directly access to. All right, so if we look around the back side, these are the servers, these are the nodes, and within there we've got obvious stuff. We've got our CPU sockets, so up to 2 in these node form factors, 2 sockets, and let's talk about the CPUs real quick. And Jonathan, the latest on those, and I can't ever remember, like 22 cores each is possible. Is that right?
Yeah, in some models, the largest Broadwell product that we support is dual 22, so you can get some big density, and some of the nodes even support 1.5 TB of RAM now. So it just depends on which node type. They're all kind of interchangeable.
Yeah, so pretty much you can buy what you need within these blocks. But yeah, so Jonathan was just pointing out up to 1 TB of memory at this point. And then as we move,
I want to. Our Nutanix sales guys actually told us just go out and find compatible memory at whatever's cheaper if you needed to add it. You didn't necessarily need to go to Nutanix.
Yeah, that was just to save a few bucks.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. The key there is that we'll support. There's a third-party hardware statement on our website that explains some of that. But just keep in mind when you do that, if it links to that being the problem, the issue, then you have to get that replaced before they'll continue. So it's kind of interesting. You can definitely do that. Yeah.
All right, so I showed you guys the hard drives on the front. Well, that's just for storage. What I want to make sure is clear here, these mounted SATA drive inside here is where the hypervisor is going to go, and that includes the virtual machines that run on top of the hypervisor. Well, that includes the built-in. No, let me just say, Jonathan, you're going to have to fix me on this because I'm making a mess. But this is where the hypervisor is going to be installed and it's going to run from. It does not consume, the hypervisor itself does not consume any of those drives that you saw a minute ago. They were on the front of the system, the SSD or the spinning drive. So, Jonathan, the hypervisor OS is going to install here, but all the virtual instances are going to go on those that data store, right?
Absolutely, including the CVMs, which I think you've covered.
Well, and that's why I kind of hesitated a minute, because I want to be clear. I wanted to ask that of you. So the CVMs, the control VMs, are they going on this storage here, or they go on the spinning on the other drives?
They go on a partition of the SSD. That's where they live.
Okay. All right. So it's just the hypervisor operating system that will be installed on this, right?
Correct.
Okay. Hey guys, let me pause real quick there. Any questions on anything we've covered up till now? I know you guys have done a good job. Brad's done a great job of jumping in. Any questions on anything we've covered so far? Okay. All right, so moving along with my video here, if we put the nodes back in. Oh, wait a minute, let's show you something. You see these, let's see. You see these planes here, these connections? This is what connects this actual server into those hard drives in the front. So this machine and this machine aren't sharing any kind of plane that connects them to their hard drive. They have a direct connection to their hard drives because of this this plane here, this board. All right, so let's move forward. All right, so on the back of these things, we've got our out-of-band management cards, or IPMIs. These are kind of like your ILOs, your DRACs. You'll see me not configuring. These are our 1 gig copper ports. Jonathan, I got a question for you. I may have asked you this last time. Do you have 10 gig copper ports now as well?
Oh yeah, you can choose 10G base T or SFP plus modules. That's that. Yeah, absolutely, and that's that extension. They're not on board. They're on that extension card. Yep.
So this part right here, we can choose to put 10 gig copper or SFPs in here, but these are going to be 1 gigs here. These are for our management piece.
Yeah, the 1 gigs can be used for management. They can be used for anything you really want. But yeah, you can choose 10G base T, copper, or you can use Twinax DAC cables, SFP plus options. So all those are options, but we just need to choose them when we order it that way.
And just so you guys know, in my lab here, I don't have a 10 gig switch, Ethernet switch. I'm going to be using this guy here for everything you guys see today. But I certainly could use a gig switch and have redundant switches and use these two. But what Jonathan was pointing out is we can use fiber or copper here in a real world production environment. All right.
And 1 gig is totally supported. Just to note there, Andy, 1 gig is totally supported. You do not have to use 10 gig. Obviously, that's the easy button. But 1 gig supported. We just limit cluster size on 1 gig, and it's not limited on 10 gig.
Yeah, and so that's really important, right? So if you're using 10 gig, you can pretty much say that you're never going to have to worry about the constraint of the machines talking to each other for the right I/O. But if you're using 1 gig, then it may be a constraint, and you guys limit the number of nodes in a cluster. Do you know off the top of your head what that limitation is if you're using 1 gig?
Oh yeah, it's eight nodes on 1 gig and limitless on 10 gig. It's more of on 10 gig it's not limitless, nothing's limitless, but logically technically it's limitless, but we'll still recommend you split the clusters off just to keep the failure domains from being so large. But 32, 64 nodes is usually where most customers will cut it off and start a new one. Yeah.
Okay, we have our crash cart, VGA connection here, just in case we have to get into the thing and we can't get in via our out of band. And we have the USB ports. This is important, right? So we have our power supplies, 110, 240, so that we can those power supplies. Those are shared, right? So this one power supply, if sized appropriately, can power the whole box, or the other one can. But ideally, right, they're both up and running and functioning. But those are shared. So when you look at shared resources in this configuration, those will be. And then when you look at the fans are all running in unison together, and you could lose one of those, and those are considered shared. But other than that, nothing else in this is considered shared. And why that's important is when you compare that to like a blade concept where everything is shared. The switch is shared between all the different blades. The power is shared between all the blades. And It's a much different concept. In this case, you're not sharing anything inside the box. You're plugging this up to, like in my case, a switch of some type, and the things are communicating across that gig or 10 gig switch. And there's less single points of failure within the system itself because there's less shared items. All right, so that was the hardware review. Let me pause there again for a second and make sure there's no questions there, because I hope that was thought-provoking and there's things that you guys want to discuss around the hardware itself. So those aren't the only options. As I mentioned a while ago, you can buy units from Lenovo or Dell, which are going to be either 1 or 2U rack mount servers. So, and what you're seeing here, we've got our four servers. Crud. Got our 4 servers in this block, and we call these nodes, so these 4. But in a situation like with Dell or Lenovo, you might actually be buying 1U servers that are equivalent to these nodes, and software and connectivity creates a cluster between those. And as we mentioned a while ago, the idea that Nutanix will support some of the Cisco gear and making Nutanix clusters out of Cisco gear. All right, so I'll keep moving on. If you guys have a question, throw them in the chat window or just talk over top of me. That'll be fine. So what we're really highlighting here is the idea that with Nutanix and this type of hyper-converged technology, you can buy what you need and you can grow as you need to grow. And there's things in here that matter, things like Moore's Law, where at this point, when you buy the second set of third set or whatever it is, you get the fastest hardware available at the time, and that may be fast enough that you can actually cut off and drop off some of this other gear, right? Or you just take this other gear and throw it in your lab. And I made a big deal a while ago about the ability to use Nutanix in a lab because it comes with a hypervisor and you can scale it and put it because it's just software. This may be a great point where as you grow your environment for whatever it is, VDI or whatever the application workload is, you take your older, slower devices and you don't throw them out. You just put them over in your lab. And now you've got the ability to have a real lab scenario that matches to a large degree your production environment. So that's one concept talk about on a slide. The other thing is the fact that I'm showing you behind me here a 1000 series and a 3000 series. That's the idea that you have 4 servers per block, or maybe you don't want to have 4 in a block and you have one server per block. But certainly the idea of density would be to have 4 servers in each block. But in addition to that, there's other options. There's these 6000, 7000, 8000, 9000 series. And what this means is you may have a situation where you want 7000 because it's going to be mostly a file server, and you want one single node running one part of the cluster, being in the cluster, and a whole bunch of hard drives. Or it could be the situation where you have some users to use VDI and they're going to need graphics cards, some of those big NVIDIA grid graphics cards, and you may want to put 2 graphics cards in each of these nodes. So you wouldn't be able to use these little nodes. You'd have to use bigger ones like the 6000s, or maybe you need more processing power, so you may throw those into a 6000. But the point here is you can buy the stuff from Dell, Lenovo, the way you want it, and spec it out, or from Nutanix, you can get the gear in this node concept that you need, and it can either be 1 node per block or 4 nodes per block, or it can be 2 nodes per block, or maybe 1 node per block. And that gives me the opportunity to talk about something that we'll be able to show a little later if you guys are interested, and that's the idea that Nutanix comes with a file server, because the control VM is basically just a little Linux VM, and it has access to all this drive capabilities. So if you're doing Nutanix and you need a storage repository, let's say in a Citrix world for user profiles or for other needs, Nutanix comes with a file server type thing. So Nutanix is a hyperconverged solution that includes a NAS that uses the hyperconverged storage technologies all in the same box, and that's just included as part of the product if you buy Nutanix. Jonathan, anything specific that you would like to say about the file serving capabilities you guys have in the product these days?
Yeah, it's starting to really mature. I think it was just an addition over the last year and just a software upgrade. And just important to know that it's perfect for home doors and user shares and department shares and so forth. It is SMB 2.1 only today, and SMB 3 will make its way into the product probably within the next I would expect that this calendar year. But SMB 2.1 should meet any kind of performance requirements you would have for Citrix-based, accessorized workloads.
Yeah, let's talk through what you just said there a little bit, and this is really cool. If I go back to this old school way versus the new school way, and I kind of tie it into something like a Tesla car, right? So this thing on the left-hand side, this thing is as fast as it's ever going to be the day you buy it. The thing on the right-hand side, because it's driven mostly through software, gets better and better every day, every week, every month, every quarter, because they add more functionality to it, and you're just sitting there, and next thing you know, you got another checkbox there that allows you to put a file server on here, or take your file server from 2.1 to 3.1 SMB, and that's because it's software driven. And it's just like a Tesla, right? A Tesla's best day is towards the end of its life because the software's gotten better. A traditional car's best day is its first day that you get it, because it just gets slower and older as you own it and worn out. Because it's not being driven and enhanced through software very much. One other thing to add, and I'll go back to the slide to do it, is we didn't really talk about this much. I didn't talk about it at all, and I should have. This concept here of the traditional three-tier architecture, or even converged, if you want to put a sales term on some of it, it has a problem, and that is no matter what you do, the data is always going to live over here, and the compute's going to live over here, and for the data to get from here into compute, so CPU and memory, it's got to traverse this network. And in the case of a hyperconverged solution, like this may not be the best example. Here, let me do it here. The data is going to live here, and for it to get to the processor memory of the virtual instance, it's just got to make this short little hop. So physics, this has to be better. Local storage is better. The problem is it doesn't have resiliency and redundancy. And I told you guys my story about my SAN before. I was getting ready to roll out the first VMware environment I ever did in 2004. I think it was ESX 2.5. And I wanted a SAN to do it, and I didn't get it because we couldn't afford it. And what we ended up with was a bunch of direct attached storage, direct attached, just JBODs, just a bunch of disk, right, in my system. And I left that job about 6 months afterwards, and I felt kind of bad because they didn't have redundancy there, but it wasn't my fault. They wouldn't buy it. And what they had was just a bunch of local drives without the redundancy factor. And that's what Nutanix brings, hyperconvergence brings to this, is the ability to have local fast storage, but still enterprise worthy and redundant. All right, so let me take a moment here and tell you guys, if you don't already know, how this works. So each of these nodes sitting back here, each of these servers has, of course, the hardware, commodity hardware, and then it has a hypervisor. In this case, it came with Acropolis, and that's what I'm going to use for the demo, but you could run the Hyper-V or the ESX or the Xen server on it. And each one of them comes with a couple VMs, but the most important one to talk about now is this control VM. And this control VM is basically the storage controller for the solution. And unlike with the traditional three-tier architecture that has two controllers, in this case, we have a controller for every node. So if I have 32 nodes in this solution, I'm going to have 32 controllers, and the work is going to be distributed across those 32 versus the two that would be in a traditional three-tier architecture. And I've got a good video that's going to show this, but let me kind of just draw it out real quick. So if I'm this VM and I'm writing data, let me do this differently. Let me show you exactly how it works. If I'm this VM and I'm writing data to my local hard drives, I'm going to write through the control VM, and at the same time, that data is going to be written across the network through another control VM down to the hardware. And that's what gets me my redundancy. So you got to have at least a redundancy of 2, write factor of 2, but you could have up to 3 where this data is actually written to another node as well. And of course, that's going to use up more of your hard drive space, but it makes it redundant in 3 factors. So again, the concept is you're writing and you're reading local drives when possible, and then when this has gone offline for whatever reason, the VM is going to come up through the hypervisor's HA concepts, and let's say now it comes up over here. The data that it needs is going to be over here, which will be fine. If it's not, it's going to go across the network and pull it here, and then it's going to write it back local so that now it is local and it has what it needs. So let me show you a good video that kind of goes over this. Does a much better job than I can. and we'll come back to that in a second. All right, so where is it at? Here we go. And I'm going to speed this guy up just a little bit. All right, so we got our multiple nodes, our multiple servers, each running a hypervisor. In general, it would be the same hypervisor, but there's a situation where it would be different, and we'll talk about that during the install. Our traditional architecture, right? We're hooked up to a SAN. We have these two storage controllers, so we have these two limited single points of failure. Well, two limited points of failure and limited bandwidth. We can get through those things. And now, in some SAN providers have actually gone to the point where they've actually started sending you every couple years a new set of controllers to try to keep their solution moving faster. But in this case, we've got each node with its own local drives. So in this case, SSDs and spinning drives. And we take our storage controller, which is just a VM, and we load it onto each of these nodes, is what the hyperconverged solution does, in this case specifically Nutanix. And we get rid of this old clunky architecture of a SAN. No more need for that. Don't need that expense. You know, I don't know how many of you guys have done this. I've done it where you spent Saturday night or a whole weekend trying to upgrade from a SAN or trying to upgrade a SAN. Those days are gone. We can do that much easily, much more efficiently, and much faster, and potentially during the day. So what happens here is this storage across these nodes looks to all the different hypervisors as just one data stream of one data store of storage. So it looks like a SAN. It actually looks like a NAS or potentially a nice SCSI SAN to the hypervisor, but it's really distributed across the different platforms. So as my VM is writing, the data is going to be written directly to flash, so really local and fast. And at the same time, these writes are going to go to some other node. So if you think about like a RAID array of disks, this is like a RAID array of servers. So we're not RAIDing the hard drives, we're RAIDing it across the VM controllers so that the data is being written redundantly in multiple places. And then when my data is being read, it's being read locally. And that's both of these scenarios go back to my conversation a minute ago around the physics, where it just has to be faster because we're not moving stuff across any type of network. It's all local. And one quick point on that, and you guys hopefully have experienced this, but if you've ever had a chance to work with an NVMe 2 type of scenario, which is on the system board where your I/O is across your system board. Hey, Jonathan, can you hear me? Test, test, test. Hey guys, can you hear me? I got a notification that I was offline or something. Hey, testing. Jonathan, can you hear me? Really? Is that possible? Hey, Jonathan. Hello. Yeah.
We lost you, buddy.
I know. I'm trying.
Okay. No problem. I just want to make sure you knew we lost you. Okay. I'll let you run and take care of it.
I should be back on in about 2 seconds, I hope.
Okay. See you, buddy. No problem. Bye.
Hey guys, it's Andy. Can you hear me? Hey Jonathan, can you hear me?
Hear you loud and clear.
We can hear you. Yeah.
Yeah, so in my lab here, in my home office, I've got a bridged Wi-Fi adapter that goes from my desk here up to the main router, and those two just quit talking to each other for some reason. So I had to jump on Wi-Fi. So we'll see what happens next here. Anyway, so I don't know, Jonathan, where did we leave off? What happened? What was the last thing you guys saw?
Yeah, I was just saying, you were talking about the elimination of the SAN, you were showing how this controller VM kind of eliminates all that complexity, puts all that storage back into servers.
Was had I started playing the video yet?
Yeah, you were playing. You'd already played about half of the video.
Okay. All right. Great. Thanks. All right. So let's move along with that. Sorry, guys. Anyway, so in a situation where we lose a control VM, which is highly unlikely, or we lose an entire physical node, the HA of the hypervisor is going to kick in, and because everything is shared, the storage will still be somewhere, and the VM will be able to fetch what it needs either from wherever host it landed on, or the control VM knows where its data is at, and it'll go get that data and fetch it. And when that data is read for the first time, it'll also be rehydrated to the local storage. So now it's local again and redundant. And the VM will continue to function. So that's what gives us our enterprise ability. I said a while ago, I worked for a company that wouldn't buy a SAN, so they just had a bunch of disks connected to a individual not Hyper-V, but ESX servers, and those servers had single points of failure because the data was just local. So guys, hopefully that helps. Any questions, comments on how the technology, the storage technology, equals the same net result, but is a totally different way of approaching it when we talk about hyperconverged solutions? Jonathan, any additional comments you want to make on that?
No, I think that video covers it pretty well. So I'm here. If any questions come up about it, there's a lot to what goes on behind the scenes. If you want more about that, I'm also putting another link in the chat window to the Nutanix Bible. The Nutanix Bible has a lot of these videos, explains every little detail about the underlying architecture. You'll be surprised at the amount of intellectual property that's just available on that site, and mainly because we have the patents. So.
Yeah, and so in addition to that, since it's just software and Nutanix is coming into this at a point in time, these additional things like snapshot capabilities and data localities and cloning and tiering, compression, eraser coding, duplication, deduplication, resilience, those things are all included in the product. And it's not like the old days, if you guys have been around as long as I have, when you bought a SAN, that got you the hardware and the basic functionality, and then when you wanted anything else, you had to pay for it. These days, SAN providers, including Nutanix as a storage solution provider, these things just are included, and you're not being held hostage for other technologies within the software stack that you're trying to use. All right, so now we're at a point where it's time to put up or shut up, right? So we want to show you guys. So let me make sure I got my network connectivity up and running and fixed here, and figure out what's going on there, so that I can switch back over and show you guys the solution and how to configure it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to stop showing my webcam for a minute. I'm going to stop showing my screen, and I'm going to switch over to my Mac. and show you guys how to configure this thing. So again, well, let me turn the webcam back on, because what I want you guys to know is that box, that gear came out of that box and they got hooked up to my lab, you know, roughly an hour ago, and that's all it is. I mean, I just racked and stacked it, plugged it up. We're going to take care of the rest of it now and get it up and running with you guys. So let me switch back over. Give me just 1 second to get over to my Mac and get it online and go from there. Be right back. All right. All right, so it looks like whatever happened has been fixed. And let me rejoin the GoToMeeting from the Mac here. All right, so just a quick check. Jonathan and team, can you guys see my Mac screen now?
I can.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, so here's what we have. Let me show you exactly what happens here. So let's go out to the Nutanix portal, which is called Gatekeeper. Nutanix Gatekeeper. And I want to show you what I did to get started here, because like we said earlier, we want you guys to see all the things that happen. So enter my information. Hopefully I remember my password. It can only be a couple. I had this all staged on my other box. All right, here we go. So I log into the Nutanix portal, and I'm going to go into the support portal, and there's a couple things I want to download ahead of time, and I want to show you guys this, because this is it's not super intuitive, but it's pretty good. So the first thing I want to do is go out to downloads, and I'm going to go down to Foundation, and right here is what's called a discovery applet, and I've already downloaded this. This is a Java applet. What I have here is my Mac is configured. It's hooked up to a very flat layer 2 network, which is probably what you're going to want to do offline, you know, off the primary network. So I'm going to do that, and that's going to allow me to discover and connect to this Nutanix environment and get it configured and up and running. But the first thing I do is I download this discovery applet, which is a little Java app. It's going to allow me to connect to the VMs that are running on the nodes when they first come up. That's called the Foundation VM. In addition to that, while I'm out here, I'll download a couple other things. I like to come out here ahead of time and get the virtual I/O software drivers. And let's see, Jonathan, am I in the right place for those?
Sorry, I had peeked away for a second. You were looking for the
VirtIO, Nutanix VirtIO.
Yeah, they should be in that list. It may be on a second. If you get the second page down there.
Oh, is there a second page now? Wow. Okay.
And those are the equivalent to VMware tools, correct?
They are not. Here it is, right? Here it is, right? It's not the equivalent. It's not VMware tools. It's the drivers that are needed for the KVM, Nutanix KVM hypervisor, so that Windows can recognize. And I'm going to show you here in a minute. These are the drivers. Like I don't know if you guys, I don't know how old you guys are, but back in the day, we used to have like a HP Quick Start, compact Quick Start drivers, because Windows couldn't understand the hardware that we were putting it on, so we had to give it a little help. That's kind of what this is here, and you'll see me use it in just a second. Jonathan, go ahead. You were going to say something.
I'm just going to say, yeah, that's spot on, and I think it'll make sense once we go through the Windows install as to where we use the VirtIO drivers in that. And we do have our own guest tools. Once you get it up and running, you'll have the ability to put tools on that allow things like single file restore from that guest, things like enhanced drivers for other things. But what I was going to mention there is that think of Acropolis Hypervisor, AHV, which we're showing you today, as just an industrial wrapper. Our implementation is an industrial supported wrapper for Linux KVM, essentially. If there was anybody on the call that didn't already know that.
Yeah, and here's the thing. We're going to show you all of this, so if it doesn't make sense yet, hopefully we'll show it to you and it'll make sense, and then if it still doesn't make sense, let's talk about it. But that's one of the things behind our concept here is let's show it real time so that you can see it, and hopefully a lot of things will become more tangible. But Brad, thanks for asking that question. That's, keep asking. Those are good things. I want other people, to benefit from you bringing those things up. I think that was Bradley, right? Okay. All right. So I've got that Discovery applet downloaded. I'm going to run it. And of course, then I've got to play in Java a little bit. So I'm going to say, yes, of course, I want to run this.
Eddie, we can't see your screen again.
Yeah. Every time I kick off that Discovery applet, it'll kill it. All right. So I'll tell it to remind me later. So what happened here is this applet went out and found what's called the foundation software, which is running on the control VMs, which by default is on each of these hypervisors. So I've just done a basic TCP/IP v6 network discovery, and it found across this flat layer 2 network the 4 servers that currently are up and running with Acropolis hypervisor, with the Acropolis VM on it, which includes the foundationing software. If you've been around Nutanix a little while, historically or in the past, they had this concept of a VM that you would run on your box that would go find these, and they've evolved this so that now you run this little Java applet and it'll go out and discover what's on the network that's Nutanix on the network. All right, so we ran that discovery. I'm going to go in here and click on just one of these nodes because I can pick whichever one I want and say launch the foundationing process, and it's going to bring up a browser, in this case Chrome. And it has discovered the block. It's discovered node A, B, C, and D within the block. And for my benefit, I'm going to just go out here and reset my configuration. I always like to do this, but I just want to make sure there's nothing in this configuration that's resilient from last week when I did this demo for somebody else. All right, so I'm still within the discovery process. I'm going to check this box here that says, take that block and everything in it, and that's what we're going to turn into a cluster. All right, so here's something to do real quick. So right now on my watch I have 1011, and so we just started this process. We powered it up, and by the way, I had it up and running for about 5 or so minutes before I would do the discovery. That gives the VMs time to come up and be discoverable. So 5 to 10 minutes. And then so I'll just hit next here. And I'm going to walk through this very simple web-based wizard. Note that this is all and everything we do is going to be within a browser. So I could do this from an iPad. I could do this from a Chromebook. I could do this from an Android tablet. I could do it from a Windows PC. It's all happening through a web browser, and specifically Chrome. I like to use Chrome for this. It works really well. So I'm just going to call it cluster.
Andy, this might be
Go ahead.
Sorry, Andy, this might be a dumb question, but so what we're doing right now is this initially setting up, this kind of resembles when you set up ESXi on a host, if you're just using like VMware with a SAN and separate servers as hosts.
Yep.
Is this similar to that, or is this just like the back end when you're first setting up a SAN?
Yep.
Something similar. Like, can you explain that a little more to us?
I'm so glad you asked that question. So this feels like the basic setup for setting up a SAN. This feels like the basic setup for setting up ESX. The net result of this is going to be the complete configuration of the SAN, the host, and the management software, in the case of VMware, vCenter. So when I'm done in 5 minutes here, I'm going to have the equivalent of the SAN setup, I'm going to have the equivalent of the host setup, and I'm going to have the equivalent of the cluster setup, aka vCenter in this case, or vSphere in this case. So I'm super stoked you asked that question, because the net result of this simple thing I'm going to do is going to be so huge that it's going to replace hours and hours, if not days worth of work.
So the discovery Java applet, you said it goes out and finds the nodes on the network. That's assuming you have DHCP in the data center, correct? What if you don't?
I don't think so. Jonathan, can you elaborate on how the discovery process works?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's not anything DHCP related. It's actually on the VLAN that we set these things up on, and there's a whole other conversation about network connectivity, but just know that the hypervisor and the CVM has to be on the same layer 2 network, and that has to always be that way. Now you can tag additional VLANs all day long and tag them at the vSwitch as well. So that's all supported like normal. But the hypervisor and CVM it must be on the same layer 2 network. Now,
yeah, the initial setup, this is what we're doing here, is I just plug this box into the network. My ports have maybe one VLAN. My laptop that I'm doing the discovery from probably needs to be in the same VLAN.
Yeah. Correct. In that discovery, what happens behind the scenes here is we're doing a broadcast when a CVM is not owned by a cluster. In this situation, it's not. It's broadcasting over IPv6 link local on that subnet. So the CVM is intelligent enough to pick up that broadcast and say, hey, we found these nodes and they're not part of anything. Do you want to make them part of something? And that's kind of what Foundation in this applet will only be used the first day your equipment's installed. Any node additions, it's completely automated through Prism, through our interfaces you'll see in a little bit. Yep. If you haven't, supposed to haven't seen it yet. So you will never have to do this except for the first implementation. And to be honest, most of the time, your folks like Andy, other resellers, they do this for you. Of course, you see how simple it is. It's not all that involved, but this is something that you only do at first stand-up.
Yeah, it's not only simple here because my lab is simple. It's simple because this is how you want to do it in the real world. If you can see the webcam I have hooked up to my PC, I've got just this simple layer 2 switch here on purpose. Not because it's my dumb little lab, but because I really do want to have a really dumb network to set this thing up on first. And then once we get it IP'd, we can plug it into the real network and have at it. That makes sense, Bradley?
I have I wanted to elaborate on that question because maybe he was asking what I was thinking, but maybe my question to that is, okay, so when you get this, you have an initial configuration where you have to put some IPs in. Do you have like an IP sheet where you do some planning ahead of time, or you literally just plug it in and you plug in your computer and, I mean, you got to have something initially for it to communicate, right?
No. Well, so yes and no. You need nothing to communicate at first other than a dumb layer 2 network and this applet, this Foundation Discovery applet. However, prior to starting this wizard that I'm getting ready to start, that I just started, you are going to want to have some ideas around IP addresses that you want to set. So the first answer is it's kind of like the old Windows day where we're doing NetBIOS and we're doing NetBEUI and we don't have to know much of anything. But we're going to use that discovery and this kind of peer-to-peer communication broadcast thing going on to set specific things because we do want, once we get on our real network, we want it to have real IPs. We want to be able to talk over IPv4. We want to be able to have specific settings. Yes, you're right. But in the beginning, no, you don't need anything. You just need to make it dumb enough on a dumb enough network where they can all happily talk to each other. Does that make sense? I know it sounds crazy, but it works.
Yeah, I mean, I think the question was more like, well, you have it on a DHCP server and it just gets a temporary DHCP address while you do this configuration and make all these changes, and then once you reboot or reset, then it takes the static IP you're putting in.
No, it doesn't do that, though. That's what I'm saying. It's all... Go ahead.
There's not really an address or anything that it talks on. It's all broadcast network traffic initially from this. The discovery tool discovers it via broadcast, correct?
Correct, and you just need to have IPv6 enabled on your laptop so that it'll do that.
Yeah.
But again,
so everything is IPv6.
Yeah, and initial discovery, correct. Yeah.
Yeah. So let me try to clear up what I was saying there because I may have made it worse. You have the automagic, if you will, effect of IPv6. But you don't have to know anything other than IPv6 is turned on and these things are listening over IPv6.
And just make sure you have that turned on your network, right?
On your laptop, and you just stick it on a dumb device like what I have here. I got to be clear on this. I want to make sure you guys are absorbing this point. You don't take this thing and plug it into your primary network first. You plug it into some dumb little off network, layer 2 network, and all this will just work. And then once you get the IPs that you want on there, then you move it over to your production network.
Yeah. Now we have done it straight into the production network before. What I think Andy's point is that if IPv6 on the VLAN is not configured right and stuff, it just creates havoc. It's easier to do it on a little dumb layer 2 switch. And going forward, you're going to really want on that default VLAN, that base VLAN that we're going to communicate with the hypervisor and CVM, you really want IPv6 link local left on that subnet, just for the main reason of being able to easily expand. It's still going to do that discovery process when you add a single node. That should take 15 minutes. If the network's not configured correctly, it may take longer, right? So.
Okay, that's helpful. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
I love hearing you guys ask these questions because I learn things too. Like, here's the thing. This is so awesome and so enlightening and so true. I haven't had a single day. I haven't had a single class. I haven't had anything in Nutanix. It's just easy enough that if you follow and keep it simple, that it will just work. And having you guys ask some of these more in-depth networking questions helps me out a ton too, because these are things I don't know. I mean, we've sold Nutanix 15 times now. I have yet to have to go set it up in a production environment. I've done lots of proof of concepts because the sales engineer from Nutanix usually comes, you get it racked, you go through this little process here, and then you all go to lunch and you come back and it's done. It's really that simple. The days or even weeks I've spent setting up SANs in the past or VMware vSphere clusters, none of it. I don't have to do any of it. It's so simple. We can do it. You don't have to have training on it. So anyway, any other questions around this before I move forward through the configuration? I think that's going to show you guys a lot of what you're kind of left wondering at this point. Okay, all right, so let me just walk through this just to check here. You guys can still see my Mac screen, right? You still see the configuration wizard? Jonathan, you guys can hear me, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yeah, we can see it. I didn't respond there.
That's all right. I just want to make sure I didn't lose you guys again. I got all kinds of crazy networking going on now that I've turned my Wi-Fi back on in some places and not other places. Anyway, all right, so all right, for the sake of this demo, I'm going to leave NTP out of it. I'm just going to put in the Google DNS servers. You guys would put in your DNS servers. I definitely wanted to use this logical cluster IP. This is an IP that's going to represent the entire cluster, and when I configure my Citrix environment here in a few minutes, I'm going to leverage this IP. I'm going to uncheck this box. I'll turn it on just so you can see it. If I'm going to configure my out-of-band management cards, I'll check this box here, but I don't because I do this demo all the time, and I don't want to keep jerking those things around and giving them new IPs every time. So I do that. The wizard's asking me here for my control VM, the storage VM. It wants to know what mask I'm going to use for that, and so my little network here, just a 255.2550 24-bit mask. My gateway in this environment, 192.168.11.1. This is for the control VM or for the hypervisor. My DNS, I'm going to give it that as well. So the cluster knows about the Google DNS. I just use the Google DNS again for my hypervisor to configure those. And I'm going to go ahead and say 24 gigs of memory for the control VM. That's a pretty good starting point there. And I'm going to hit next here. And what's going to happen is it's going to prompt me now for some additional information. The host name for my hypervisors, we'll just call these AHV. That's a pretty common acronym for the Acropolis hypervisor. The control VM. So this is asking me, what do you want to IP the control VMs as? I'll say 192.168.11.121 as the first one, and then 124 will be the last one since I have 4 of these here. What do I want the hypervisor to be? 192.168.11.131. And again, as I think it was Christy, I believe, asked this question earlier, these are things that you're going to want to know ahead of time. So Nutanix has a worksheet that you'd fill out to fill all this information out. And I think, Jonathan, the control VMs and the hypervisors need to be on the same VLAN and subnet. Is that what you said a while ago and something we ran into with a client the other day?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Yep. They have to be on the same subnet.
All right.
Can Nutanix ship pre-configured?
It can't be. It cannot ship with the IPs pre-configured. Not that I've ever seen in a couple of years. It ships with and it actually ships with Acropolis hypervisor. If you do Nutanix-based hardware, it ships with Acropolis hypervisor. When you walk through this, you'll see the next couple screens, it's going to ask you which hypervisor do you want to run, and you just give it the ISO, and it goes and does it. But
yeah,
it doesn't ship. But now, once you, like I said, once you get the initial the cluster stood up, as we're going through right now, man, node adds are so simple. You plug them into that layer 2 VLAN, you click expand, and the Prism, you'll see in a little bit, and then you'll be able to apply the IPs and then apply the actual hypervisor that you want to run, and it just does it all. It expands it on the fly. So
yeah.
Yeah, but it can't ship with a free IP.
So Bradley, nobody's asked that question before because it's so easy to configure. But maybe you're asking that question because your data center is remote to you. Is that why was that question so important to you?
8 countries.
8 countries. That's kind of remote.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, a lot of times what we'll do in a situation like that, Bradley, is you know, the reseller like Andy that you're working with, a lot of times we'll have it shipped to them or to you, stand it up, and then reship it. But yeah, unfortunately, there's no way that I know of. There could possibly
like most sites we
different.
have remote hands only, and that's from the hosting provider. So it's like that would be a logistical nightmare getting them to hook up a dumb switch to it and pre-configure it.
So Bradley, if you want to buy Nutanix for 8 countries, if you want to send it here, I've got my lovely basement here. I'll have it all. I'll do them all for you. You just let me know.
Sure.
Is there an option of anything like an iDRAC type thing where if he did have some remote hands connected up, then he could just set it up over his iDRAC?
Yeah, so that's what I was showing a minute ago. These, if I go back here a screen, these IPMI, those are your out-of-band management cards like a DRAC or ILO card. That's exactly what that is.
You got a chicken and an egg problem because you got to run this configuration to get the IPMI set up first.
Well, you don't have to.
Yeah, you're not.
When the nodes boot up, you could actually. Go ahead, Jonathan.
I'm sorry, you're not going to configure. You're not going to do foundation over IPMI. It just won't. It won't work. You have to have. You can obviously after it's set up and you get this configures IPMI. We call it IPMI. It's iDRAC, and it just depends on the maker. But yes, once you have it set up, then you're good to go for remote for remote support. But you couldn't do a foundation over it.
Okay. Jonathan's probably 100% right. I've done some pretty strange things when I've screwed this thing up, and I got support on the phone, and we used IPMI, and we did a lot of resetting, I guess, through that, and then we used the VM, the foundation. I don't want to talk too much. I may confuse you guys more. There's some pretty neat things you can do to recover these guys, but Jonathan's probably right. Remotely, we probably need to get some base configuration on it, like I'm doing right now, in order to get it to where it needs to be. And again, we'll do whatever you need for us. If you're interested in buying a bunch of Nutanix, we'll, ship them here or ship them to the office, and we'll configure them for you. All right, so moving forward, going back to the screen, we got this information pulled out. I'm going to go ahead and validate network, and this will probably take about a minute. It's just going to go out and make sure all those IPs that I gave it don't conflict with anything else on my network. So that'll happen over the next minute or so. I would ask you guys to ask some questions now, but you guys have been great asking questions already. Pretty awesome. Are there any additional questions that anybody has at the moment while we wait on this? One thing to highlight here is, again, this isn't configuring the host. This isn't configuring the storage. This isn't configuring the hypervisor management layer. This is configuring all of that. So basically, the I guess maybe 10 clicks you saw me just do and the handful of information I had to put in, I am done. I mean, I'm going to hit next here in a minute. I'm going to tell it which hypervisors I want to use, and I've gone from this thing from the loading dock to into production in roughly 10 or so minutes, if I didn't stop. What this screen here is asking me is, it wants to know, am I going to use a single hypervisor across all the nodes, or am I going to mix and match? And the reason why you would mix and match a little bit is because you might have 4 nodes here. You might want 3 of them running ESX, and you might want 1 of them running the Acropolis hypervisor just to provide a file server type of scenario. So you can mix and match these things, or you can run them with a single hypervisor across the stack. And what I'm doing here is I'm going to just say a single hypervisor. And this is like Jonathan mentioned a while ago. If I was going to run ESX or Hyper-V or even XenTegra, I would come out here and upload the appropriate tarball that has the Acropolis control VM software for that whatever version I'm going to run, which you get off of that website that I showed you guys a few minutes ago. And I would also upload whatever my ISO is for VMware, Hyper-V, or whatever it is. In this case, I'm just going to say skip because I'm going to use the Acropolis that comes on it, which again is a great platform for running certain application workloads, if not a lot, many application workloads, but specifically Citrix is a no-brainer on Acropolis Hypervisor. Important screen here.
Mixed,
go ahead.
If you have a mixed node or mixed cluster, so ESX and AHV hypervisors, can the virtual machines fail between the two hypervisors?
I don't think so.
If they okay.
And that was dumb of me to hit back, so now it's got to do my checking again. But so Jonathan, if I'm running, the only reason I would run a mixed mode cluster at this point would be for Acropolis-centric things like the file serving, the VMs that Acropolis comes with, software, and yes.
Yeah, so basically, a physical cluster, consisting of 3 nodes or more, which is really the basis of a cluster. And those nodes can be super small, a single socket, 64 gig node with a little bit of storage, super small to super big. But they have to have 3 to start. Now, that particular 3-node and more cluster has to run all of the same hypervisor, okay? Now, what I will tell you is there's one exception to that, and that's in our storage-only node. One barrier to adoption early on was the fact that we could not scale, or hyperconverged technologies could not scale compute separate from storage. And we all know that from experience in the data center that a lot of times our compute resources stay pretty flat and our storage resources continue to grow. So we need to be able to scale independently. Well, originally in hyperconverged technologies, that meant you had to add compute when you didn't need it, and that meant you also had additional spend from a hypervisor cost perspective. So we have a storage-only node that runs our Acropolis hypervisor under the covers just to power that CVM so that it can communicate with other CVMs in the cluster and make that storage available to the other nodes in the cluster without hosting VMs. That is the only case that a mixed cluster is supported. And that's a very common use case for customers that are using us for server virtualization.
So Jonathan, I told him wrong then a while ago. It's not about the file serving. It's about storage-only nodes?
Correct. It's only use cases for storage-only nodes. Now, we have a lot of customers that, because of some business problem that they're solving with ESX in production, like you were talking about earlier, maybe it's something with the ecosystem that they have to have VMware for. But we have a lot of folks that are doing that in production with these remote sites all run an Acropolis hypervisor because it's embedded and included at no cost. And we can actually bidirectionally replicate in the product today between those 2 dissimilar hypervisors. So we can take a remote site that's running HV and replicate it into a primary site running ESX to do things like tape out or backups or whatever. And we can do the same thing for ESX clusters. We can replicate them to AHV clusters. And that VM, once it lands there, is in that format. So again, taking the handcuffs off of choice, and that's been in the product for about 1.5 years now.
I bet VMware hates you guys.
Well, obviously they want everybody to be on VMware, and we don't prescribe that. I don't walk in the door or any customer.
I'm just giving you a hard time, but yeah, probably the reality.
It's true. They kind of dislike it sometimes.
Yeah. All right, guys, so what you're seeing here in the background, and you might even be able to hear it, but the nodes are joining into a cluster, and they're starting to reboot, and I bet within 30 seconds here, we're going to have our cluster up and running, ready to be used, and we're done. I mean, as far as the heavy lifting of what I promised usually used to take me a week or more to build out, from racking and stacking all the gear to creating storage zones to getting the ESX host up and configured, and these things are really starting to scream now, so they're rebooting, but we're done. We're going to be done here in just a minute or two. So any other comments or questions while we wait on the next few seconds here for this thing to finish up? you know, going back to Jonathan's talking about storage only node, that's where those like 7,000s might kick in, where you might have a, you know, you have a need to grow this thing storage wise, but not really compute wise, and the 7,000 might be a good fit for that. So this thing's done. And if I click on Prism here, which is Prism is the overarching system that manages the cluster. And as you can see, it took me to one of the nodes, because I can tell based on the IP address that I'm going to 124. It took me to one of the nodes, which in a peer-to-peer model has the ability to manage all the other nodes. And if this one wasn't available, it would have sent me to another one, and I would just connect it to that 149 logical IP. Hey, quick comment here, and I'll probably say it again in a minute, and I should have said it earlier when I started the recording. We're doing this because we love it, and we want people to see it, and we think it's awesome technology. We also sell these technologies. I'm sure you probably picked up on that, hopefully a little bit along the way. But we've had several situations, and Jonathan can attest to this, where we've done these demos and things, and people, you know, like the fact that we try to show it off, but then they turn around and buy it from SHI or CDW. And my only plea here that is, if you're interested in this type of stuff and you're open to working with another vendor to, you know, give us a chance to talk to you about it pretty early on. But you know, if you can't and you're just here to learn, that's fine too, because that's what we love to do. All right, so first prompt here wants me to give it a better IP address, excuse me, a better password than just admin. So that's what it is by default, so you know that. We'll just throw in some information here just to get through this. I love to point out the fact that I put in consultant here, because I think that's the most respectable thing in our industry, is to be a consultant. I happen to own this company, but I don't care. I'd rather be a consultant than some kind of CEO or something. I'm just going to say continue for now. I usually don't say that. I usually just don't. I usually don't worry about that. But here, we're here. We're up and running. Let's see what our one warning here. We don't have NTP configured, so we're just going to go in here and we're going to mark that as resolved. So make sure we have a nice, healthy environment showing up here. But this is it. This is where we're at now. So let's do a little test drive. Let's walk around here a little bit and let's talk about, let's say, the hardware. So we see we have, I like to do the table view, but we have our 4 hosts. If I were to click on VMs here, you would see that we have currently 4 VMs running, even though it doesn't look like it, because we haven't configured any VMs. The reason why that is because if we come over here and check this box, you'll see that the 4 control VMs are up and running on each of these hosts. Each of these have a control VM up and running. Let's see, SMTP, we won't worry about that right now, but it is nice to know that it wants to remind us about that. Let's look at storage real quick, because this is the big thing, and I showed it in the video earlier, or maybe in my diagram, but we do have, by default, we have 2 storage, data stores created. One is a default container, which is what we're going to use for pretty much everything we do. So as a Citrix admin, as a Citrix demo, I don't have to know anything about storage. I'm just going to use this default container, and I'm going to roll forward with that and be able to do everything I'm going to do without having to create any storage volumes or groups. Now, I could very simply come in here and create my own storage volumes and groups, and I can turn on things like compression and dedupe, and those technologies from earlier. So Jonathan, let's walk through this one time so people can see. We'll just call this one Andy, and we'll consume from the default storage pool, which is that 14 terabytes of physical storage that is in this box when you take the 4 machines and multiply their hard drives. But let's go through these. So this is my replication factor, and because of the number of nodes I have in here, the maximum I could do now is 2, but you could do up to 3. A write frequency of 3. Jonathan, I don't even know what reserved capacity. Well, I do know what that would be, but do you want to expand upon these as I go through them? And I have a question for you. So I've got 4 nodes in here. Why am I showing a write replication factor of only 2 at this point?
Because in order to do replication factor of 3, we have to have 5 nodes or more. This is a changeable feature, changeable option on the fly. So once you get to the 5th node, you can change this container or data store.
Yep.
I think it's worthwhile to talk about what we call a container. A container really is just an agnostic name for a data store. When we create a 4-node cluster or a 10-node cluster or a 20-node cluster, there's single storage pool across all of those. It incorporates the SSD and the HDD within the same pool. You don't even have to make decisions about what layer to place things on. The file system is intelligent enough to move things around depending on where it needs to be for I/O. But once you get 5 nodes, you can go to RF3 if you choose. I'm telling you, I don't have anybody over 50 plus customers that are doing RF3. Main reason is because we really don't start to consider that until we get up to 12, 16, 24 nodes. Again, that's a conversation you can have. But that's why you don't see it.
Well, so if you did RF3, right, you're going to use a lot of your physical data storage. And specifically in my case, because I'm getting ready to use this thing for a Citrix demo, it would be kind of silly to take a bunch of non-persistent desktops and have them redundant, redundancy of 3. It'd be a huge waste.
Yep, and I'll touch base on the other 2 columns there. So by default, these data stores are thinly provisioned. So if your storage pool is 14 terabytes, your data store is going to be thinly provisioned across that. If you want to fat provision, which I just beg you guys to just really not do. There's nothing wrong with it performance-wise, but the main thing is that if you fat provision it, now you have to monitor your space utilization at multiple places. If you thin provision it, allow it just to default to thin provision, you have to monitor your space usage at one place, and that's at the storage pool. So there's no benefit from doing that. But we have it there for people that are doing that for payback to someone that's buying a terabyte worth of space or whatever.
Yeah. Can I add one quick thing to that comment?
Yeah, please.
So, and this is a really Citrix-y thing to say, and it may not make sense to you guys now, but I'd be glad to expand upon it further. But Citrix has this concept as of 7.11, I think XenDesktop 7.11, with MCS called full clones. And what that does is it creates a copy of the base disk for every VM, and that makes it more portable. There was some issues before where the traditional way of doing MCS and non-persistent clones was just a link back to the read disk. With Nutanix, it's always been a full clone. So even when it wasn't 7.11, you were doing full clones. So full clones of MCS is what happens within Nutanix Acropolis, and it's thinly provisioned. So what you're going to see in a little bit, I'm going to spin up, 50 XenApp servers using MCS, and you're going to see the amount of data being used is something like 20 gigs or something very small. And that goes back to Jonathan's comment about it's thickly available but thinly provisioned, which is extremely fast and extremely fast and optimal and even portable. And so there's some benefits of that in the world of Citrix virtual desktops. Go ahead, Jonathan. What was the next thing you wanted to cover?
I think that was it. I mean, I could go on all day about that. I mean, I think most important is compression and dedupe there. I'll tell you that, honestly, I came from a big storage background, so compression was a curse word, but I'm telling you, everybody that I have in production is using compression, and they're using cache dedupe. It means, basically what that means is inline dedupe and compression, and what happens is that the file system's intelligent enough, again, to apply what's most effective with the least amount of impact. And so we want you to just keep in mind that your screen switched over, Andy. But just keep in mind that you're going to enable that. There's going to be some great storage efficiencies, and just trust in that to work. It really is what it is. Now, with the eraser coding that you see there, we have to be a little more careful for performance characteristics. So we have to be a little more careful with that. I rarely enable eraser coding except for in workloads like Splunk or real cold workloads. So I would always enable compression and dedupe and use erasure coding very sparingly today. And that's really it on that screen.
Okay. And again, from a Citrix guy perspective, it really doesn't, I don't want any of that turned on. I don't need any of that turned on to successfully and optimally run a Citrix virtual desktop backend. But we definitely wanted to go through that to talk through it for you guys, because some of you guys are not. Jonathan, last time we talked, I walked away not truly understanding what this Nutanix management storage container is. Do you have any thought? Can you expand upon that at this point? I know you said a lot of times you just get rid of that thing.
Yeah, so it's something that, let me explain what the Nutanix management share is for, and we're big in engineering just to make it hidden. So basically, if you want to stand up Acropolis file services or self-service portal, the binaries are included in this data store. And so that's what that store is for. is to enable the implementation of those two technologies. So the long and short of it is that if you're not going to use those, you may choose to just delete that share or just let it be. But we're asking engineering internally just to hide it, just to make it a hidden share that nobody needs to know it's even there. And so that's kind of what that is.
Okay. All right, guys, look, a lot of conversation there. Any questions around anything that was covered in that overview just now? All right. A ton of things to show on the screen, right? We have our free physical storage at this point, and then with the right frequency turned on of 2, then we're down to about 7.36. And again, this environment, I don't know how good a job I did explain this earlier. The one I have here is just my small business version. This is kind of like a branch office version. It might be really appropriate for a small virtual desktop or Citrix rollout. 3000 series probably more appropriate, but I do have a lower end model here that we're working with. In fact, it's a couple-year-old model at this point. So, all right, so we've got some work to do here. So we've got to get some ISOs over to our environment so that we can do some work. And I've got some other things I want to show you as well. But for now, let's get the first thing. Let's get this ISO. So I've got a 2012, I guess is what I'm going to use for this demo. We're going to take that guy, we're going to upload this ISO into the default container from a file I have here on this Mac. And let's see if I can do this easily enough. So these are just files that I have staged over here. So this is my 2012, I believe. So let's just upload this guy. And this will take roughly a minute or so to upload. So I want to go ahead and kick that off. Let's
Andy,
see.
pardon me, but
no, yeah.
I'm strictly VMware and a SAN experience. So are you just creating a VM right now?
No, what I'm doing right now is like in VMware where I upload an ISO for the repository. So let me answer. So I may have answered your question wrong. So that's what I'm going to do in a minute. I'm going to create a template VM. Okay. My first step is to get an ISO, and that's again goes back to my slide in the very beginning where I said this isn't like a cooking show where we pull a finished cake out of the box. You're seeing me do something dumb, and you know I'm uploading an ISO right now. You know, there's no hidden anything here. You're seeing the whole thing. So that's what this first little step is.
So basically we're done. Like with VMware, you have to go in, you install ESXi and all that stuff, and then you have to set up vCenter and everything. So are we done?
We are done.
With this?
We're done.
So we don't have to do any of that.
We've moved on to getting real work done. Yes.
So,
okay.
So this, and Christy, just to speak to that just a little bit while it's uploading, in this cluster we chose to run Acropolis Hypervisor, which was already embedded, right? Had we chosen to run ESX, we would have had a screen there where we could have uploaded the ISO, and it would have installed it for us. Now, obviously, that extends the implementation time a little bit because it has to install that hypervisor instead. But it's all automated in that same process.
Okay, yeah, that is my other question is, could we run ESXi on this if we wanted to do that? That was the other question.
Well,
at that point, after that point, we would still have to install vCenter, correct?
Right.
Yeah. Well, so sort of. You would have to install vCenter, certainly to manage it as part of a Citrix environment, yes. You'd have to install vCenter to get it, to get vSphere up and running, to do a lot of things. You could do a decent amount of things within Prism, and I do know that Nutanix is working on adding more and more management functionality into the Prism stack to manage ESX. But of course, you know, VMware doesn't really want that. They want they want you running vSphere because that's where they make their money. And that's where they get their management components. So short answer is you could do a little bit more with ESX without doing any more, but you really need to get vSphere in there if you really want to take advantage of what VMware wants you to have.
Yeah.
With
that said,
sorry.
Go ahead, Christy. I'm sorry.
Would you have to go ahead and create a Windows VM to run vCenter, or would you be able to run it on this platform somewhere that I'm not familiar with?
Yeah, so what would happen is if we would have chosen to install VMware on this, you would have had to install vCenter. You know, so what we normally would do is get the cluster up. We map to a specific host using using a fat client. You know, I prefer, and what most people are deploying these days is the appliance. The vCenter appliance is what I think most people. But yeah, if you chose to do the Windows-based install, you would have to stand up a Windows VM on that host, that VMware host, and then you could, install the vCenter and get everything up and running. It just requires more steps. It still greatly simplifies like traditional architecture deployments, but you still have to manually do like the the vCenter or the VMware cluster. You still have to set that up. You still have to manually add, set up your vSwitches. I mean, there's a couple vSwitches out of the box that are there, but AHV, as you can see, kind of greatly simplifies all that because it's the management platform as well. So to Andy's point, not to be too long-winded here, I'm sorry, I know I'm being, but to Andy's point, we can, once you get vCenter up and running, you get your VMware environment, up and clear, then you can do most of the day-to-day tasks within Prism interface that you're looking at. If you'll go back to the overview there for me, Andy, the main thing that changes on this screen is that the hypervisor summary says ESX in the version of ESX, and it looks the exact same. We also support Hyper-V, and then, like Mandy mentioned earlier, XenServer.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, the reason I asked the question is because with DCS, it basically comes and VMware is already installed. You just have to do a couple of configuration items on it, and then you're done. So I didn't know if you offered that option or if it was just something you had to do separately.
Yeah, so basically, if it will ship with AHV, if once you get to if you do the foundation, it'll offload that work from you by you just supplying the ISO. Now, when we look at HyperFlex, again, I'd love to have a long conversation about that because there's a lot of things not in HyperFlex that even the Cisco guys are realizing, and I'm not meaning to bash that. So let's take that offline. But that technology is far from enterprise ready, and there's just so many. We compete with it quite often. So I think it's worthwhile to have that conversation offline if possible.
Yeah, sure. And by the way, I'm not touting it. That's just the only other hyperconverged experience.
Oh,
I've
it's all
seen,
good.
So
Yeah, no worries. No worries. There's a lot of buzz in the market. That whole hyperconverged term is certainly taking. It's everybody's hopping on that bandwagon for sure. And but yes, that you would have to do some vCenter work. That initial stand up, correct?
Yeah, it's not a ton, and again, just like I mentioned with Bradley earlier, if you got it and you want somebody to do it, we'll do that for you. It's super simple. There's not a whole lot to it if you provide the parameters that you need. It's not a lot. Something to point out here, and Jonathan was kind of talking around in a minute, and we'll see a lot more of this once we get the VMs up and going. But this Prism interface has a ton of analytics in it around the performance of the hypervisor, performance of the VMs, whether it's processor, memory, disk, I/O, all those things that you normally buy third-party tools for. There's a day's worth of stuff that we could be showing you in the Prism interface that we're not at this point for lack of time. But people are spending a lot of money on third-party tools to monitor and monitor their environments, and a lot of that's built right into the Prism interface that comes with Nutanix. All right, so I did a couple things while you guys were talking there. I created this temporary VM. This is my template, and I want to show you guys a couple of things I did, and I got a couple steps to finish. But basically, I just created a VM, and I'm going to go in now, and for the sake of ease, I'm going to put essentially my 2012 CD into the drive, into one of my CD-ROM drives. And I actually added 2 CD-ROM drives to make my life easier here in a minute, and I'll take one away later. But in the other one, I'm going to put the driver repository for this. And so I've essentially gone in here and I've created a VM. And during that process, I actually created a network as well because I didn't want to wait till later. But I created a network that's on VLAN 0, so it's coming across all my VLANs. And I added the network adapter to this VM from that network, so VLAN 0 here. I do want to point out this. 2 things. When I first started working with Nutanix 8 months ago, this VM host affinity didn't exist, and this enable flash mode didn't exist. And what this means is these 2 technologies have been added, and as I continue to upgrade this solution, it's getting better and better and faster and faster. And a lot of times I'm doing demos like this, and I'm seeing checkboxes that I had never seen before, and I can just go up to the little question marks and find out what those are about. But what my point is, Nutanix is evolving both the hypervisor and the storage layer extremely quickly, and as a supported Nutanix platform. I just do updates and I get these technologies in, so it gets faster and better as it lives versus getting slower and older as it lives, which is, you know, it's not supposed to happen that way, but it does when it's software driven and not hardware driven. All right, so let me power this guy on. We're a lot of great conversations. It's awesome, but I'm kind of slowing myself down by babbling here. Let's see. Let's see. What did I do wrong here? Host operation fail. What's that all about? All right, so let's go into here and clean this guy out. So I get, well, all right, turn him on. So Jonathan, I may need some help here. I'm not sure why this isn't powering on. What have I done? Let's go back. I got a little aggressive there. I'm not sure that so here's my drive, my volume group. Save that. Let's try turn this guy on again. So there was something in my CPU configuration there that was not happy with. I'll have to go back and try to figure out what that was. All right, so I click Launch Console, and as you guys can see, no software added, no special client. I'm just using a web browser to do all this, and now I'm looking at what I'm sure a lot of you guys have seen many, many times before, which is the building of a Windows VM, again, from scratch. You know, I didn't just import something. I'm showing you guys every piece of the puzzle so that there's nothing to be missed here. Oh, there are some basic things I do want to show you guys later, like live migrations and things that, you know, you would just come to expect in a hypervisor console. Let me get rid of these control VMs here. I don't want to do those now while I'm doing it. You could, but I think it probably wouldn't be the smartest thing to do. Oh, there is this tab here for the file server. This is where we were talking earlier about being able to set up shares and create repositories for things like user profiles, things that as a Citrix admin I can't really do a project without. And same thing happens here. That data is spread out across the cluster and written in such a way that it's redundant across the control VMs. Jonathan, while this thing's building out, anything specific that, anything else we want to cover here?
Oh man, I could go on all day about some of this stuff. So be careful what you ask for there.
How about this? How about go ahead. Yeah. Well, some of the alerting and stuff that's built right in, your SNMP traps, email alerts, things that, again, a lot of people pay third-party products for that's built right into this.
Yeah, so if I may, you know, just kind of touch on a couple of things. To
Sure.
me, as a sysadmin, as in my formal life and all that, one of the things I never knew was what Andy's getting to here with the VM. If you'll go back to the VM for me, Andy, we'll talk about that 1 second.
Sure.
And go into table, please.
Into the VMs table, okay.
Yeah, and so you're not going to see a great thing here except for these tabs that he's clicked. Turn back the virtual disk for me.
Well, and so
a couple things.
Go ahead.
Between those two tabs, is what I really want to point out here is that by default, regardless of the hypervisor, unlike a SAN, we understand the detail of a virtual machine to its depths. So if you look at, you know, this is not an add-on. This is just embedded into our Prism interface. This VM analytics are pulled directly via a hypervisor APIs, and regardless of the hypervisor, it's available. And we do up-to-the-minute analytics on VM performance. If you go back to that tab for me.
And Jonathan, we haven't installed the guest tools yet. We haven't done anything yet to
I know.
What I'm getting at here is
we don't need that.
We don't need that, right? It's all in the ecosystem. It's all coming from the hypervisor itself because we're so tightly ingrained with it. We don't need third-party agents. It's right here. Go ahead.
That's right. I mean, so that's exactly my point. So up-to-the-minute analytics. So like what we don't have, or what we typically don't have, is we either have to stand up something like SolarWinds or something of that nature, not bashing the product at all, just saying we have to install yet another product to get some analytics, which should be out of the box, right? And so this is what I, encourage you to look at, like with the add-ons, with like vRealize, and so forth that you have to have for VMware. You're going to have that at your fingertips without additional spend.
Yeah, my easy way to say that is from a virtualization, certainly from a virtual desktop perspective, Nutanix gets it, right? They get what we all need. They get what we need, and they don't make us go out and buy it from somebody else. Quick conversation here. I've jumped back over to the VM, and I don't have any hard drives here. I need to go out, and I need to load a driver off the VirtIO stack here. So I'm going to pull the one for 2012 R2 because that's what I'm using here. And there's my SCSI pass-through driver, so I'll hit next. It's going to go out here, rescan, and now it's going to have the drivers it needs to see my Acropolis KVM hard drive that's in that VM. And I do this once. Some people get hung up on having to do this at all. I do it once. It goes in my template. I don't ever have to do that again. So, all right. So now watching the water try to boil again. Jonathan, back over here. What else? I know there's, like you said, you could go forever.
Yeah. So that's a big deal. So that's a big deal. You see the Create VM button there. So, in AHV, we can create VMs, we can edit VMs, we can do all that within Prism. We don't have a separate interface like vCenter, okay? Now, we have that same tab. If you look at the green box up there that says plus Create VM, we have the same tab in a VMware environment. And we can do those same day-to-day tasks within this interface without having to go to vCenter. Now, vCenter needs to be up, not because we pull APIs from it, but because things like, networking configurations, if you want to add a VLAN or change an uplink, that still has to be done through vCenter. But the amount of time that you have to go back and forth is what we're trying to minimize as a company. And that was an add-on for just through customer ask, is that, hey, we hate the web console, it's terrible, or we just don't, whatever reason that reasoning's for, if it's just that they don't want to go back and forth, we've added that functionality to do that stuff through here. So just know that that's there as well.
Hey, Jonathan, one of the things I always want to cover when we do these demos, and while this VM's working, let's talk about, okay, here's my system. It's up and running. What if I wanted to update to the latest Acropolis software? What if I wanted to update to the latest Acropolis hypervisor software? What if I wanted to update the firmware of the physical boxes? How hard is that? Well, because it's all within an ecosystem, I just come out here to this upgrade software, and I can check for each of these if there's a newer version. So the Acropolis OS, this is the control VMs. Those are up to date on what I have now. I could go out and download the binaries and upload them here, but I could just do a simple online check because this thing is on the internet. The file server, there's an update for that, which when I get done with you guys, I'll probably go in and update it. The hypervisor, there is looks like there's an upgrade for that. I can come in here and do a pre-upgrade or an upgrade now, and it'll actually pull down the data. I think in this case I may already have it down. And I could do things like upgrade my storage controllers. I can upgrade my hypervisors. I can upgrade my firmware. I can upgrade the foundationing tool that we used earlier that's built into the control VMs. And if I get to a point where I trust it, and I do because I don't really have any production users, but in general I would trust it anyway, I can do these things in the middle of the day or in the middle of lunch, because it's going to download what it needs. It's going to migrate the VMs off to a different node. It's going to upgrade that node. It's going to migrate the VMs back and then go upgrade another node. That is extremely game-changing and powerful to be able to do all this in a single platform and a single ecosystem without having to, schedule some downtime on a Saturday night and work from 1 in the morning till 4 in the morning to upgrade a SAN.
Yeah, let's be honest about it. Hey, downtime doesn't exist for a lot of customers. We've got a healthcare customer that's running around, to a bunch of our different conferences, kind of telling how they don't have downtime. I mean, it's a healthcare system,
Yeah.
And so the point there is that this is the kind of flexibility we need to have in data centers. It should be demanded, not optional. And wouldn't it be cool if I could update them kind of like I can on a smartphone? And I'm telling you, it really works that way. I'm not saying it's perfect. It never has an issue, but I'm just saying it's game-changing. For these people, they do their updates at 2 o'clock on Tuesday. That's when they do their upgrades, because 2 o'clock on Tuesday is better than 2 a.m. on Tuesday, because the hospital never stops, and they've got everybody there during the day. Yeah. So they could never do that on 3-tier architecture, not even close, not even an option.
And that doesn't matter what the hypervisor is, right? You can upload your own VMware ESX hypervisor if you want to.
Yeah, so we'll, if you want to continue to use Upgrade Manager from VMware, all good, use it. But if you want to use, we'll upgrade ESX for you. We'll move your VMs for you. We'll move them back. We'll automatically create this this ebb and flow of upgrades. Now, on the CVM upgrade, when we start looking at the controller VMs that Sandy was mentioning, the Nutanix code, you're going to be doing those often because you're going to get a payload of like 20-some new features in every update. We had 3 major updates last year, and every one of them had a payload of over 20-some new features. So you're going to be doing those regularly, and the Acropolis update is completely non-disruptive. We do not even move VMs for it. Yeah. Basically, the CVM is updated, and we do a serial reboot of the VM, and the I/O for the VMs are routed to neighboring CVM. So this being even moved for Acropolis update.
And Jonathan, feel free to tell me where I said this wrong, but as a sysadmin in my past life, the idea of upgrading the firmware of some of the subcomponents, whether it's the system or the disk or the HBAs or whatever, that was like an afterthought. I wasn't doing that unless I absolutely had to. Now with this type of system, I can actually do that and do it systematically.
Yeah, specifically around Nutanix hardware, we completely own that stack, so it's very easy for us to write automated update processes for it. It's a little more interesting if we choose Cisco hardware for Nutanix, just or Dell or Lenovo. There's some things that you cannot do firmware-wise through that. That's the only caveat. All the other OS automation updates are still there, but on Nutanix hardware, it's completely all that stuff's completely game on.
Yeah, and I bring that up primarily for that reason. I mean, we brought up the Lenovo stack, we brought up the Dell stack, we brought up the Cisco stack, but if given the choice, I want to run Nutanix on Nutanix so that I get all that feature set and parity. But again, not a requirement. But Nutanix hypervisor, Nutanix control software, Nutanix hardware makes my life easy. All right, so there we go. So I've got a VM up and running. I got a few things I want to do to it. The first thing I want to do is I want to install the Nutanix guest tools. So let's do a couple things here. First, let's come out to my VM. Let's update it. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to get these eject these CD-ROM drives out because I don't need those guys anymore. And in fact, I don't know if this will work or not, but I'm going to try it. I'm going to try to get rid of this guy. I probably have to shut it down to do that. Okay, so let's don't worry about that now. Anyway, the drives are empty. I'm going to come back over here and I'm going to say manage guest tools. So let's install the tools, enable the tools, mount the tools, submit. And if I come back over to my VM, I should get a pop-up that tells me that I have a new CD-ROM drive in. Usually it's about the time I click on that. And it's a timing thing. So now I'm going to install the actual guest tools, and this will take a minute or so here, but this will give me the guest tool installation. I'm going to say no because I don't care to go out and discover the network now. But this is the equivalent to installing the VM tools or the Hyper-V tools or the Xen server tools to optimize my my virtual machine.
Andy, may I ask how easy or how much of a pain it is to install the tools for Linux? So I've had some challenges with VMware on occasion.
Yeah. I have no idea. I'll pass that one over to Jonathan. I as a Citrix admin, Citrix reseller, I spend so much time in Windows, but absolutely Linux is part of the story even in Citrix. So Jonathan, do you have any background in the guest tools for Linux?
Oh yeah, I mean they mount, just like anything, just like a CD-ROM in Linux. They're just completely supported in there as well.
Is there any, I think maybe what Christy's asking, is there any gotchas in doing that? So, in the world of Linux, sometimes it's an afterthought. It's obviously becoming more and more mainstream, but any gotchas that you know of?
Yeah, no, not really. I mean, you don't need the VirtIO drivers for Linux. Obviously, they understand their own language, so it's not something you have to install for Linux. If you want some self-service restore, like single file restore capabilities and stuff like that, you'll need to install the guest tools. It's not something that you must install. I think there's benefits, just like with VMware tools, to performance and so forth, but there's no caveats that I'm aware of, honestly. I haven't heard any negatives. I've got customers that always run a certain amount of Linux VMs, and they run a Acropolis hypervisor, and they install the guest tools, so I haven't had anything that stands out.
Hey guys, I got to do the normal, normal Microsoft thing and go set my time zone and my base VM here, so no big deal. What time is it? It's 11 a.m., right? Let's talk about that self-service thing. So the guest tools just installed this self-service. And Jonathan, you're going to have to educate me on this. This is one of those things that just showed up on me one day. That means I can do file level restores of files within the VM. Is that what that's all about? Jonathan, you there?
That's correct.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I had to
a demo.
Yep.
Now is that?
Yes, I'm sorry. I was on mute there.
Is that straight up within the VM itself, or do I actually pull that from a Nutanix file repository? Where does that come from? That self-servicing of files?
It ties into like an index of what's in that VM. From a host perspective, so basically whatever snaps live on the environment, when you pull up self-service restore, it'll list them, but also list the individual contents of them, so that you can pull a single file out. Back in the old days, we had to mount the VM as an admin and pull the files out that we wanted. This is just an extension to try to make it easier for single individual file restores.
Okay, great. Hey guys, all I'm doing here is I'm going and cleaning up the template a little bit. I'm getting rid of that second CD-ROM drive. There's really no reason to have that. I just had it during my install to make it faster. That way I didn't have to swap back and forth. I'm going to power this guy up one more time, and we are going to run through the sysprep process so I can have it the way I want it for my template. And then we will be ready to move on and do some things with it. Hopefully you saw how fast that thing just booted up for me. I think without the time being set here, I have a little bit of an issue, but don't worry about that right now. Oh, let's go ahead. In my template here, let's set the time one more time, see what happens. Time zone should be right. And 11 a.m. Hard to believe it's already April 21st. All right, so I've got this one last step, I think. I don't think I'm missing anything. But I'm going to run a sysprep process here. System. And we're going to generalize this guy and shut him down. That's just how I like to do my templates. And as soon as that's done, we'll be able to start building out a VM for my base Citrix environment. I'll do that next, and then I do want to show you guys any questions, anything you got, any demo you guys want to see that we're not proactively showing you. I'm going to show you a simple live migration. It does have the ability to do affinity now. I don't know that you saw that. I don't know if I made a big deal out of that earlier, but server affinity, where we can tell it to run from a certain machine all the time, which is really important, of course. It has distributed resource management now, so DRS in the world of VMware, I think we call it, so that we can have machines that move around based on resource utilization. That's completely in the product now with just Acropolis. You don't need VMware for that in this world. Any specific demos you guys want to see while we've got this thing up and running and it's just kind of in its base, infancy format? Jonathan, is there anything specific you would like to show while we've got the opportunity here? Anything else?
Yeah, I think the cloning functionality is a big thing to see. You've already covered the automatic upgrades. Know that we have built-in replication, site-to-site replication. Obviously, that doesn't fit necessarily a lot of times into a virtual desktop type environment unless it's the user data portion. But just know that replication is built into the product on a VM level. Very different from traditional SAN technologies where it's at a LAN or data store level. We do it at a VM level, at that level of granularity.
Oh, I meant to ask you earlier to explain, if I'm running Acropolis, the hosts are going to see the data storage, and this is kind of a moot point, but I find it interesting. The Acropolis, they're going to see the storage as like an iSCSI LUN. Is that right?
Yeah, it maps over iSCSI for Acropolis. It's actually, we take the strength of each hypervisor. So for Windows Hyper-V, that's actually SMB 3.0. For VMware, that's the ESX NFS data store. Is what's presented. So we take all the drives and all the nodes and present them up to the hypervisor as either ESX NFS, and then we do iSCSI for KVM because it's the strength of that hypervisor.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, and I guess XenTegra would probably be NFS as well. I don't know if you even know that or not. I shouldn't have said it that way. Do you know for XenTegra it's probably NFS, right?
It's NFS for XenTegra. Yep.
All right, so I've got my template VM, and I'm now going to make a clone of him. We're going to give him a little different name here. We'll call him Base because he's the one I'm going to make my Citrix desktops out of. I simply hit clone and save, and I can either wait a second or I can refresh my browser. We see the action here happening. So I should show you this. You go up here and you can see the actual functionality of things happening. In all honesty, it's probably done. It's just a refresh. There it is. And I'm going to power this guy up. I'll need to name him, join the domain with him, install my Citrix tools, and we will be ready. But once I get this guy turned on, which I'm sure he is now, we'll go over here and we'll launch the console. And this will be pretty speedy. This will come up after a sysprep, so I'll have a couple little Windows things to make sure I do. Hey, Christy, I meant to ask earlier, your use case for Nutanix, is this for the virtual desktops? Is this for the back-end server infrastructure, or is it for everything? Or is there a different application that you're looking to use Nutanix for?
Yeah, both.
Yeah.
Actually, both the server infrastructure and the desktops. But I think the primary would be the back-end server infrastructure.
Yeah, that's interesting because the one I would tout first and foremost would be the desktops, unless you've already spent a bunch of money on something else. I do want to point out one thing from a best practices, Andy best practice type thing. I do want to see environments that are carved off their virtual desktops separate from their infrastructure, like you were just talking about. A lot of organizations don't do that because of cost, and Nutanix kind of eliminates that barrier in terms of the cost of, say, VMware to run the virtual desktops, and they're more likely to be able to carve those things separate from each other. Go ahead, you had a comment? I'm sorry, Christy, did I interrupt you?
Oh, no, I'm good. Thanks.
Yeah, sorry. All right, so VM up, running. It's my master VM. I go in here and get this guy named appropriately on the domain. You should see that he is going to be lightning quick here in a second. And again, this is the base entry model that I've got this all running on. And it's good. It's fast. This isn't a 3000 series. So this would be like again a small business version of, or a branch office, or even a small virtual desktop, either server shared or VDI desktop platform. What this thing would be great for. All right, so let's do a couple things here. Let's give this guy a good name within Windows itself. Now, what I will point out here in a minute is no matter what I'm doing, I have absolutely 100% confidence that everything I'm doing is not related. If I have any slowness at all, it has nothing to do with I/O, and I can go show you that here in a minute by looking at the Nutanix Prism interface. It's not going to be I/O. I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's Windows optimizations. I don't know if it's CPU. I don't know if it's memory. Again, this is the slower, older model that I have here, but I'm pretty confident everything I'm doing is not waiting on a lot of disk activity. And the way I would show you that is to come out here and show you, the latency that I'm seeing for the SCSI drive.
Yeah, and you can also go on and go over to storage where the VM tab's at, Andy. And get under storage, and that same analytics are available at the storage pool layer and at the entire data store layer. So we have those same statistics all the way through from the VM all the way through the storage. So that whole mentality of trying to prove your innocence when somebody brings you a performance problem. You guys know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
You guys got some graphs to prove your innocence. But,
yeah, we have a customer where we had to go out and buy a third-party product to prove that it was the hypervisor storage that was the reason why Citrix was running so slow. If you're a Citrix admin, you basically live every day proving something's not Citrix's problem. All right, so there's my base VM's been renamed. My next step is to join my domain with it, and then we'll be ready to install the Citrix agent, and we'll be ready to demo a whole bunch of virtual desktops happening very quickly.
We'll step away just a second, and be right back.
Okay, yeah, while you're doing that, I'm going to show live migration just for the sake of it, because everybody wants to know that you can do that. Let's see. And again, guys, if there's any specific demo that you're wanting to see, let's just do this real quick. So we'll just ping something simple like Yahoo. All right, so I'm pinging Yahoo. I come over here to the cluster. I can look at my VMs, and I can look at the table, and I can see that my base VM is currently running on the Acropolis node 4, my number 4 hypervisor. I'm just going to come down here and say, migrate this guy, and I'll let him pick it. I'll just let him pick it here, but I could specifically move it over to a certain host. So if we come over here under our tasks, we'll see the migration is in process. If I keep an eye on this base VM, I'll see that I didn't do a -T, and that the migration is happening here. And if I switch back and forth, the migration's done, and I didn't lose a single packet. So I just showed the activity and how it's working. So hopefully that wasn't too much of a trivial demo for you guys, but it's, I'm sure all of you were like me. The first time you saw live migration, you thought it was the greatest thing ever. All right, so coming back over to my VM. I'm going to join my domain with it, which again is running on that laptop Xen server configuration I have that was sitting on top of the Nutanix gear. I'll restart this guy, and we'll be ready to move forward with the Citrix integration. So let me pause there, because I know there may be one or two of you guys that don't do Citrix with this. And is there anything else anybody wants to see demoed or discussed as part of the base Nutanix configuration? We're essentially done with Nutanix. There's more to talk about, but I mean, as far as having a functional system, we've been there for an hour now, probably. All right.
I have a question.
Sure.
Sorry. So once we get all of our VMs set up and get my virtual environment all running and everything, let's say we use what you've got everything set up now with the Acropolis and everything.
Yep.
What sort of backup systems are, and I don't know if you're allowed to say really recommended, but say like I use Veeam with an XenTegra on to back up my virtual environment. So what type of products do you guys, I guess, do you favor or do you recommend, or have you found it work best with this?
Yep. Yeah, so Jonathan, are you back? Because I don't want to answer this the wrong way. So here's my take on it, and I'm a consultant. I'm an integrator. First of all, for virtual desktops like the Citrix world, I don't need a backup solution. I've got what I need in the non-persistent world, and I've got stuff baked into Acropolis. For example, the ability for Acropolis by default has the ability to do asynchronous replication, so you can replicate the VMs from one data center to another. It's built in, doesn't cost anything. It's part of the product. If I'm running ESX, I can actually do synchronous replication, where I can take VMs from one data center and the other data center and replicate them vice versa to each other. And I know Acropolis, I think maybe by the end of this year, they're going to have the ability to do that within the Acropolis hypervisor as well. And in addition to that, baked into the product is the ability to replicate your VMs, backed up the holistic VM up into Amazon's AWS storage tier as well. Now, what you may be talking about is like a third-party backup solution, like a file-level backup solution, which is part of what that self-service restore product they've built into here is what all about, because that has been a gap in the solution. It's not a Nutanix fault. It's a third-party solution where Nutanix isn't ESX, so it's not the big 800-pound gorilla. So first and foremost, if you're using ESX, everything stays the same. You can use whatever you want. You can use Veeam. But a lot of what you need from a backup solution possibly is already in the product. And Jonathan, I don't know if you came back and you want to address that further.
I did. So yeah, you hit it spot on. My biggest thing is if it's VMware, it's the exact same. It uses VADP at a hypervisor layer, and the infrastructure underneath is kind of invisible to it. If it's AHV, the only one that's written to our APIs currently to do it at a hypervisor layer is Commvault. They've already written their APIs directly to it. Otherwise, it requires an in-guest agent to back it up. I can tell you that Veritas and Veeam and all of them are in the process. They have the APIs, they're writing to the APIs. It's just a matter of when. And customers pushing up are a big help there.
Yes, so the way I would kind of paraphrase that is Nutanix is not the 800-pound gorilla, but they're quickly becoming the 200-pound gorilla. And there's a lot of third-party systems that are starting to embrace it because they see the writing on the wall that this commodity hypervisor is going to take a lot of business and a lot of people are going to go in that direction. Christy, was that
I know from our perspective, we're using VMware data protection, but part of going towards Nutanix was the built-in backup and replication system has all the features and functionalities as data protection has for us, allowing us to do daily or weekly snapshots of the whole virtual machine as well as multiple backups for file-level systems as well. So it was going to take care of our backup in our new system as well. We weren't going to use VDP.
So, Christy, did my answer and Jonathan's answer and Bradley's answer kind of answer your question?
Yeah, I think so. Like in this scenario for us, we don't, let's say we're not allowed to have the additional Nutanix installed in another data center location, but they want us to do more of the file level backup and the VM so that we can save them for archival and such. And so we needed a solution. Like I said, we've gone with Veeam. Veeam doesn't currently work with this, is what you're saying, but Commvault does?
Yeah, Veeam works with Nutanix if it's running ESX as a hypervisor, just like it does today.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, but if it's running an AHV, then that's a different consideration, yeah.
So Christy, one of the things that Bradley brought up earlier is, and there's a lot of people doing this, they're not ready, they love Nutanix, they like the storage part of it. They're not ready to adopt Acropolis for every one of their workloads, but they see a day where it's coming that they'll be able to migrate over to Acropolis, and Acropolis, Nutanix has tools that's going to allow you to one-click migrate and never have to look back, or in Bradley's case, for the reassurance of his executives, he told them they could go back if they wanted to, but they're certainly make it really easy to go that direction once the third-party vendor that you need comes along.
Yeah, I've personally got customers that are renewing VMware on a year-by-year basis.
All right, I never did go back and show you guys. We did a live migration, Jonathan. So that base VM is now on number 1. A few minutes ago, it was on number 4, I think. Anyway, it moved. No big deal. It was kind of uneventful, but it's supposed to be uneventful. Let's see. What else can I show you guys while we wait on the water to boil over here? All I'm doing now is I've joined the domain. I got the VM ready. I sysprepped it. I cloned from that sysprep, and now I'm installing the Citrix virtual delivery agent, which will take a few minutes and a couple reboots along the way. Jonathan, this is our dog and pony time. If there's anything else that I haven't bugged you into showing folks.
Yeah, so the analytics piece we've touched on. Let's look at the hardware tab. Let's kind of show you what's available on the hardware tab. what's pretty neat here is that we get the same view that we've looked at from a VM and a storage perspective and now at an entire host perspective. So you never really have to wonder how utilized your host is as a whole. And let's talk about expansion of the cluster. So if you get back to the host tab, Andy, you see here that you have 4 hosts in here, but if you wanted to add a 5th, this is what it would look like. You click expand. It would look on the same layer 2 network for a CVM that wasn't owned, right? A node that wasn't owned. And if it found one, it would say, hey, we found one. Do you want to add it to your cluster? You would say yes. You would give it the IP. And then it would ask you the same thing it does through Foundation. What hypervisor do you want to run on this? You give it the ISO, and literally it extends the storage pool dynamically. You don't even have to manually resize that. That's the extent of expansion.
I used to do that. I used to leave one node out and I would add it, and literally, guys, it's like 10 minutes and you've got an expanded cluster. And just to clean up something Jonathan said, and maybe he did say it right, and he'll have to clean me up here, but you said on. So right, you have it goes out and finds a cluster VM, a control VM that's not part of a cluster, and says, oh, here's one that's available. Do we want to bring him in?
Yeah, absolutely. Do you want to bring it in? And if you do, what IPs do you want to give it? Hey, and by the way, what hypervisor do you want to run? So all that's automated completely.
Yeah, the funny thing is I ask you to go off on a tangent like that and talk about something, then if I forget about my VM and it's sitting there waiting on me to log back into it.
I have one more question, sorry, while we're thinking about this. Would you be able to go through and just show us maybe adding or just creating another data store for a particular, like if I wanted to create a data store just for like my, I don't know, for some financial databases that I want to keep separate?
Yeah, we 100% can do that. So let me get this VDA. Go ahead, John.
Yeah, while he's doing that, go ahead and let me cover that a little bit. So we'll show you that. I think the biggest thing is to know that unlike traditional 3-tier architecture where we had different data stores and we segmented them on their own underlying storage pool or LUN or whatever you want to call it, we don't really do that on Nutanix. The only reason you would create additional data stores is really one of 2 reasons. You could create additional data stores because you had reached the maximum of the VM count allowed on the hypervisor. So like VMware, you had reached 2,000 VMs. You would create a new data store. Or if for some reason you would want to turn off compression and dedupe on a data set, that's done at a data store level. That would be the only 2 reasons you would do it. There is no performance benefit from separating the data store out. Through the Nutanix distributed file system, what happens is every write in the cluster or every write in that pool goes directly to SSD. If it's not all flash, we'll handle the dynamic tiering of data as it becomes cold. We also allow the pinning of workloads to SSD if you want to make sure it always lives there. But the file system is intelligent enough to tier things based on how active it is. So if it's migrated down to HDD in a hybrid scenario, we'll promote that back to SSD on your behalf as it becomes hot again. So it's a much different thought process than that. I understand exactly what you're thinking there because I've always thought the same way before I joined Nutanix. It's really a radically different way. You don't have to make those decisions anymore, really.
So guys, I was just hanging out here waiting on this thing to ask for another reboot before we jumped into that, but let's do it. And Christy, don't feel like you got to apologize. Every time you jump in, you say you're sorry. You're making this very worthwhile because you're asking questions that are going to be very relevant to people later. So Jonathan, let's go through this. Here's my high-level view. Here's my diagram view. Here's my table view. We want to create a new container. Is that what we want to do?
Correct. And remember, guys, container is just an agnostic name for data store.
So a new data store. We're going to use our data storage pool, the only one that we have defined. We could have defined others. We're going to come in here.
We actually could own it. One correction there. We could not have defined others. There's only ever one storage pool across all of those guys. So you don't ever have more than one storage pool in a cluster. You can have multiple data stores, but not storage pools.
Yep.
Are all the disks, so like with my compellant that I have, it's you have like tier 1, tier 2, tier 3. Tier 1 is the most accessed data, and then tier 3 is the least accessed, least frequently accessed, and then after a certain while, 30 days, 15 days, whatever you specify, it pushes those files down to tier 3 so that they're on the slower disks. Is that the same sort of setup here?
So tier 1 in this situation, there's a mix of SSDs and hard disk drives in the same storage pool. We don't have to separate those pools out because we dynamically move data on a block basis between the tiers as necessary. So, for instance, every write in a Nutanix system, if it's hybrid, goes to SSD 100% of the time, and it lives in SSD for the length of the data as long as the SSD tier doesn't become 75% full. Once it becomes 75% full, we'll start to down migrate blocks of data that have been cold by our algorithm. And then if those data blocks on the cold tier become hot again, they get automatically moved back to SSD. So the whole thought process is I've got to control where my data goes. We've offloaded that to our file system. And it's the same file system and the same architecture under the covers that Google uses. That's exactly how they do it. And you don't have to make, it's like I give the old example, it's the silliest thing while this thing's rebooting. But like, think about Google, the Google search engine, and think about the data where, you know, Prince died not too long ago, right? I'm not a big Prince fan, but I thought about this one day. The day that Prince died, nobody was searching for Prince. Nobody was looking at anything about Prince. He'd been a nobody for 20 years, right? But the day he died, every Google search in America was about Prince. If that data did not dynamically move, there's no way they could have humanly predicted that. So we've moved that analytics to the file system to do that for them, and that's what we do. So you don't have to make those decisions whatsoever anymore.
So Jonathan, I've got to defend the Prince fans that are going to be listening to this video later. Now, I'm just kidding.
Yeah. I agree. I'm slightly offended by that remark. He's definitely not a nobody.
Well, I can tell you, I think if I could say that I wasn't searching for Prince in the last 20 years, but some people are huge Prince fans. I just wasn't. But I can assure you that the Prince search
Jonathan, we're just
way up the day he passed away.
We're busting your chops. That's
giving you a hard time, man.
I got you.
Okay, so guys, I'm doing with one last install here on the VDA. Unfortunately, I wasn't smart enough to copy it over, so I got to go back and browse to it every single time. That was my fault, but you guys get the point. Let me do this one last piece, get the Citrix virtual delivery agent finishing up here, and then Jonathan, we were halfway through, or a third of the way through, or maybe 90% through the way, creating a cluster. Is there anything, not a cluster, but a storage container? Is there anything that you want to show specifically here for Christy? Or Christy, do you have anything specifically you want to ask?
Yeah, so it's pretty uneventful, Christy's the point. Yeah.
I just really wanted to see you create one. That's all.
Yeah.
I just wanted to see it in action.
Yeah. Absolutely. I wouldn't even change the advertised capacity. Just let it thin provision, click compression, just click class dedupe and class. I'm a big fan of both of these. I don't care what data set it's in. I'm telling you, 50 some customers, they all have it on. If I have anything to do with it,
sorry, what were those two options that you just closed? It was like a erasure coding and something about whitelisting. I couldn't read it.
So go back into update there, Andy, and let me explain those real quick. So.
Well, hold on, before you explain it, just to point out how, there's a big part of Nutanix we haven't talked about, and how they have a lot of people that focus on the UI and making it look and feel better. They spend a lot of time on UI. So just this, like, I'll just point this out, how good a definition this is going to be for the eraser coding. So even if Jonathan wasn't hanging out with us, Christy, while we were doing this, we could look and get a pretty good, we don't have to go Google it, is what I'm getting at. But go ahead, Jonathan.
Yeah, so I always recommend that people check compression and leave the value at 0. And what that means is it'll tell you in that little question mark beside compression is that, scroll up just a little bit, Andy.
Yep.
It don't even have a question mark. It just says, hey, set it to 0 means it's going to be in line. So I leave it at 0, and we'll do cache deduplication, which means that it's performed in line as well. Now, what the file system will do is it will apply what's most effective. It will not apply both. It will apply what's most effective and least impactful. So you'll check both of those. Erasure coding, we have to be a little more careful with, because erasure coding can have a performance impact as it's implemented today. So we use it for cold data sets like Splunk and so forth. So we have to be a little more cautious with that. File system whitelist is something that you rarely, if ever, use.
Jonathan, go back to eraser coding quickly, because you told us things about it, but you didn't tell us what it is, right? It's the reclaiming of unused data space. I mean, maybe you tell me what that is.
So no, it's basically a software-based RAID implementation for cold data. So by default, when we write data, we write it twice. And if we can retake that data and apply some software-based RAID to it, it can minimize the amount of space required for data protection. That's what erasure is for.
Yeah. Okay. And you were going into file system whitelist real quick?
Yeah, file system whitelist is a way that some people will use to migrate data into Nutanix. To be honest, that's probably the least used box on this whole screen, because there's other ways to migrate that are better options. But it's there if you want to mount this NFS mount point somewhere else. You can do it. So you'll use it very sparingly, if ever.
All right. So we hit.
And when you click save, all you have to do is click save. Yeah, and now you have your data store. That's all there is to it. The days of mapping, zoning for fiber channel, IQNs, and all that stuff are completely eliminated.
Hallelujah.
Yeah. So Christy, two comments for you. One, like you just said, hallelujah, right? So I don't know, Bradley seems like he's pretty sharp on the storage side, but and obviously Jonathan used to be a storage admin, but you know, you don't have to be a storage admin anymore to do this stuff. You don't have to go knock on the door of the storage admin every time you need something. You can do it all yourself right here in this console. And the visual I got when Jonathan first started talking was a bumper sticker on the back of the car that said, "My storage platform's smarter than your like the grade school thing. My storage platform is simpler and smarter than your storage platform, or beat up your storage platform," or whatever. I don't know. Bumper. There's got to be a bumper sticker in there for us techie guys somewhere.
Yeah, we got to get one of those. That's a good idea, actually.
If I go back over here to the VDA, it's finishing up. It's going to ask for yet one more reboot, and we will be ready to move forward with the demo. All right, so that's finishing up. While that's finishing up, I'm going to jump out here to my my delivery controller. So again, I've got this laptop sitting here with my data center on it, and one of the things that it has on it is the Citrix 7.13 environment already configured, sorta, parts of it anyway. So this that you're going to see on the screen next is my Citrix delivery controller. Somewhere, here it comes. And this is my lab, which runs on a little simple laptop. But if I jump into here now, I will see that if I open up Studio here, I will see that there is the ability to configure hypervisors environments that I can connect to. And that laptop's not the fastest thing in the world. I should have already had this done. But all right, so if I jump in here to hosting, I can add some hosting repositories. And in this case, a new repository would be XenServer, System Center Virtual Machine Manager, aka Hyper-V, VMware vSphere, aka ESX, Citrix Cloud Platform, Microsoft Azure Cloud or Azure On-Prem, or actually the two Azure platforms, Amazon EC2 or physical Wake on LAN. But you notice there's no Acropolis here, so let's get that in there. So I went out to the Nutanix website earlier, that same one I showed you earlier, and under Tools, there's a thing for Citrix Xen Desktop, and I just happen to have a fairly recent version of it sitting right here. And if I run this, you're going to see that my 7.13, it needs to be 7.9 or higher, but my 7.13 environment has the ability to integrate with Acropolis, the cluster that we've been working with all this time. So it'll take just a second or two here to get in there. The install is going to happen really quickly, but I got to stop the services and then install and then start the services. And again, this goes back to my, I'm not hiding anything from you guys. I'm showing you everything, so I think that was important to show you. I come out here to Studio. And this time around, when I go under hosting, I can add a new connection. And one of my options this time will be Nutanix Acropolis. So we're going to put in that logical IP that I gave earlier, which was the 11.149. We're going to add my credentials. And let's call it, and we'll use Studio to manage it. It'll go out there, it'll query the cluster, and we'll call it NT resource. Let's do call it that. And we are now ready to create our first catalog using the Nutanix hypervisor. So let's come back.
Let's use Christie's data store.
Okay, sure. So I want to do one other thing here. I want to come out here and just shut this guy down. I like to log in after the VDA install just to make sure nothing's complaining, which there's usually not. I got to type in it.
Pick a username.
Yeah. I don't know why that matters. That's not important. All right, so first log in here. So this seems pretty happy. We're going to shut him down. And we're going to come back over to the cluster. Just as soon as this guy shuts down, we're going to go out. We're going to create a snapshot because we're going to want that snapshot to create our catalog from. So he's down. Come back over here to our VM tab, table. Here's our base. Take a snapshot. I like to I have my own little way of naming these things. Base underscore April 21st, which amazing. And we'll just say it's about 11:45. All right, so now we are ready to rock and roll. We come back over here to our delivery controller, and let's create a catalog. And for the sake of our test here, we'll create a catalog with, well, to make it pretty impressive, we'll do 100 XenApp servers. Now I'm not going to turn 100 on because I don't have that many. I don't have that many IP addresses in my DHCP. But we'll create 100 cloned, full cloned MCS XenApp servers. I know some of you guys, if you're a Citrix guy, you're probably very much PVS centric, which is great. But I'm telling you, if you have Nutanix, there's really no reason not to do MCS. It is killer easy to manage and killer fast. All right, so we're going to create 100. Go ahead.
And that was actually, Andy, that was going to be my question as to whether or not this Nutanix eliminates the need for PVS.
You know, I say yes, and I'm as big a PVS fan as anybody you're ever going to meet, but I have a lot of customers that it's a great technology. It's very comprehensive. It's very flexible, but it's also a little complex, and it's a little bit. It's one more thing to know, right? So almost every Citrix environment has one Citrix admin. You're lucky if it's a full-time Citrix admin. You know, having 2 Citrix full-time admins who both really understand PVS is a challenge. And as you guys are going to see here, with something like Nutanix and MCS, I can just quickly go through and update and create VMs, and it's going to make your life very easy. So let's just call this NT bang bang or number. And so I don't know, just giving these things random names here, but I hit finish, and my job of creating these VMs is done. And the way I can show you how fast this is working is if I come back over here, I will already see my temporary prep VM spun up. So the heavy lifting of cloning the actual virtual drive, because of the way Nutanix works, is done. So what normally takes on a good system 8 to 10 minutes at best just happened in under 5 seconds because of the way Nutanix has locality and the way Nutanix handles the storage cloning of the base VM. And I don't know how much you guys know about this. We teach a class it seems like every week, but every other week for sure, where we teach MCS. So that VM has already come up and been prepped. That's the fastest I've ever seen that happen. So hopefully it worked right. We'll see. But what will happen now is the controller, which is over here somewhere, he'll check in with the Nutanix environment and find out that the VM has been created, it's been prepped, which is a little script that runs within there, and that it's done. And then we'll come back over here and we'll see, and maybe it's already happened, that the prep VM will be deleted. It's gone. And if we go back over to the catalog, the MCS process here in a second will realize that and start to move on. It'll create the Active Directory accounts. It'll create the machine accounts within AD, and it'll create the actual VMs themselves. So we give this just a second. Yep. If we flip back over here and start refreshing this screen, we're going to see those VMs start to show up. So those NT 1 through 100 are going to be created here for us. And literally, as long as you got this thing configured properly, as far as creating VMs and even updating VMs, it's that simple and that fast.
And the MCS you can use even if you're on ESX. It's not Acropolis
well,
side.
Yeah, so let me answer that question a little more specifically. So the answer to the way you said it is no. You have to have, if you're running ESX, you have to have vSphere in order to fully integrate, because that's where your APIs kick in. If you're running Hyper-V, you have to have System Center Virtual Machine Manager, because that's where the APIs kick in. If you're running Nutanix or XenServer, because they're more of a, well, XenServer at least is more of a peer-to-peer type thing, you don't need any additional components. So I think that was Bradley. The answer is you got to have vSphere if you're running ESX. If you're running Nutanix, you don't need anything else. Does that make sense? All right, so if we go back over here, it's all happened quicker than I could flip back and forth. We have 100 XenApp machines. It could have been Xen Desktop VDI machines, whatever. We have 100 machines ready to go and be put into a delivery group. So that's pretty amazing, to be honest with you, especially if you spend a lot of time like I do doing this stuff. All right, so we're going to create a delivery group now, and we're going to use, let's just use 20 of those machines. I better use 10 to start with. We can add more in a few minutes, not a big deal. I just don't want to over subscribe my DHCP server. Okay, we're going to give everybody access to it. We're not going to add any apps. You know what, let's just add apps now, because it'll be, we'll do it in a minute. That way you guys can see that process. We're going to add desktops. We'll just call this desktop. We're not going to restrict anybody at this point. Enable it, hit next. We'll call it Nutanix again. I don't know, Nutanix DG. Hit finish, and in a matter of less than a second, probably, I've got a delivery group with 10 of those cataloged VMs ready to be used. And what we should see any minute now, I should have stayed there. We should see the delivery controller start to tap the cluster on the shoulder and start to say, hey, you need to turn some of these on so that people can start to log in. So if we hit this a couple times, we should see that I can tell the fans are kicking in. See, now we've got machines that are powering on. And at some point in the next, I don't know, 2 to 3 minutes, we'll have machines that are initializing and then up and running and ready to go. So take a quick look back over here at the Prism console, and we'll see that some of these machines are starting to get powered up.
Yeah, you'll notice there real quick, something we kind of breathe in and breathe out of too quickly sometimes. I know I do. Is look at how dynamic the load balancing was automatically for balancing the workload across hosts. That was not something, again, that you had to do. And that's the DRF-like functionality that's built into AXG.
Oh, I did want to show you guys this. We just spun up 100 VMs. Let's go look how much storage we used in Christie's pool or container. All right, Christy, you are using, so my base VM was in the default container. We just used Christie's pool to create those 100 VMs. We are using 665 megabytes of data for those 100, plus the base. That was my 22 here, plus the template we created earlier, which is really a big chunk of that. But for those 100 VMs, guys, we're using 665 megs of space in Christie's container. You know, if I was in front of you guys, I expect a little applause or whatever there, but I'm just kidding. Pretty powerful. And if we go look, let's see, I stumbled upon this the other day. If I go look at these VMs, I can actually show you the actual disks themselves, which is here. So they look like they're 40 gigs with the identity disk. So this is my differencing disk. And again, if you don't know MCS really well, I've got a class I teach that can show you this. But this is my differencing disk. In the case of Nutanix, it's a full clone of the base disk, thin provisioned. That's why we only have that 600 and something megabytes of use. And this is my identity disk, which is that really small drive. So it looks like it's 40 gigs plus 16 megs, but because it's thin provisioned and the way it's mapped back to the base VM, we're not using that amount of data, additional data. Any questions about that? So as you guys can see here, I've got 10 VMs up and running, ready to be used. And in theory, if I come back over here to a browser and I connect to my environment, which is my lab here, and I haven't screwed anything up because I've been playing with this a lot lately. Yep. Let's do this. My guess is my IP address is coming off of my home router and not my my DNS is coming off my home router. So give me 1 second, I'll fix that. I'm like a mad scientist with all the stuff I got going on here. Yeah, that's my problem. See, I'm pointing DNS to the wrong place because I was troubleshooting something last night. 204. All right, let's try again here. So let's see if I can refresh. There we go. /Citrix /store web. We log into my default storefront configuration here, user 01, password. And here we go, the moment of truth. Uh-oh, I've got two things named the same. Okay, let's try this one. I was doing some testing for a client last night and I called it desktop as well, so that's why I'm confused. But chances are that's the right one, has to be, because the other one's not turned on right now. And in the time that we've spent together today, we now have a fully functioning, really quick, super fast virtual desktop, in this case a server desktop, but a very functional desktop environment up and running. And 2.5 hours ago, this thing was sitting on a loading dock. So what do you guys think? Any questions, comments?
Hey, Andy, is that a published desktop?
That is a...
Not like a real video.
Well, yeah, that I could have been, everything you saw me do could have been a VDI desktop, but in this case, and you know how, Manrique, you know how excited I am about server desktops. This is a server desktop, not a VDI desktop, but it could have been the same. You would have followed exactly the same steps.
Yeah, but because that's exactly what I want to do.
Yep. Okay, so there's that. Any other questions, comments? So I know you guys, some of you guys are Citrix guys. Let's go make an app. So let's go add an application. And we'll go from the start menu and we will add, I don't know, calculator, because that's what we're doing. Next, finish. Go back over to my web browser, wherever that thing went. And we will refresh. And now we got apps and we're ready to launch an application. And where did he go? He's down here. There he is. And now we've got this really powerful app called Calculator. All right, so any questions, guys? Uh-oh, not what I wanted. All right, now I want to show you my favorite thing about the whole demo. And if you use PVS, you can relate to this big time. So you just saw that happen. That's okay. PVS might have taken me a long time. MCS on another system taken me a while. But now let's say I want to update my image, and I want to go in here and I want to add an application to my image or update an application. I go back to my base VM. Let's power this guy on. And let's see. So we got base VM. We're going to launch the console. And we're going to log into this guy, and we're going to add an application. In this case, we're just going to add the Telnet client. Come on. So that all those emails I'm getting. Some of those are about a big event we're doing with Doug Brown. So if you know Doug and you're interested, we're doing one in New York, Raleigh, Charlotte, and Atlanta. Let's see. All right. So here's my base VM. I'm going to go in here and I'm going to add an app. Let's see. Add or remove. Add or remove. And you guys have all done this a million times, so I won't bore you with it. So Telnet client, just as an example, it could have been any application, doesn't matter.
Andy and team, I hate to cut you, but I've got to get a rental car back to the facility before I get in trouble. It's been a pleasure. I really appreciate you guys joining. Andy, you doing this again. It's just awesome, man. Awesome. So please let us know. Andy knows how to get a hold of me. I'll shoot my info in the chat window, and please let us know how we can help.
Thanks, Jonathan. Always a pleasure. A lot of good commentary, and we're almost done here. I'm just going to show them how to update the image, and then I'll make sure you get a copy of this recording, or I'll post it on YouTube and make sure everybody gets a copy of it. And we'll see you next time.
Yeah, we won't hold the French comment against you.
Oh, please don't. You guys have a great weekend. Bye-bye.
All right, see you. All right, guys, just almost done here. We're almost at the finish line, but I do want to show you how easy, super easy it is to update your image with Nutanix, or with MCS and Nutanix under the covers. Okay. All right, so there's my my base VM. He's turned off now. If I come out here and take another snapshot, when 2012 base, let's see. I guess it's still the same day it was a while ago, huh? 2017. It is now 11:59. We submit this. We go back over to our delivery controller here. We're going to update our catalog. So go back to machine catalog. We are going to update him. Just walk through the basic steps here. We're going to use that snapshot that I just took. I'm going to say on next shutdown, I could tell it to automatically do this, but I don't want to have to wait on that. I want to show you guys how quickly I can do it. So there it is. The copy's done. If I go back over to the environment here, I'll see that the prep VM is up and running again. There it is. This time we'll try to be fast enough to catch it. So what happens is he boots this thing up. It's so fast you almost can't catch it. Boots up this VM. There's a script that runs within there about the time the OS loads. And you will see this thing come up, and we'll see it go away. So what this does is, if you don't know, it runs a script with this VM up but offline, so it's not on the network, so it doesn't impact anything. And then it'll shut it down. So there it goes. It's shut down already. And if we come back over here, refresh this guy, we'll see that he's off. And now it's just a matter of waiting for the controller to reflect that he's off. And you'll see the update of the catalog happen in a matter of seconds, because he doesn't have to create the VMs. The accounts in AD are already there. And refresh. It's like watching water trying to boil. There we go. We're done. So you guys, if you use Citrix and use PVS, I love it. It's a great technology, but man, is that a fast way to update your images. So if I go back.
Yeah, just to interject real quick, this is one of the reasons I went to PVS in the first place, because on a traditional 3-tier architecture, it took forever from just an MCS standpoint, and so it was quicker for me to go to PVS. But with this running on Nutanix, this is a no-brainer. I mean, this is lightning fast.
It is, isn't it? And simple. And the thing is, you can take your junior Citrix admin and you can show them this, and so you can go on vacation, or worst case scenario, you could remote in and be done in 10 minutes.
Yep. Hey, Andy. Yes, you know that we are a PBS shop out here, but I mean, I'm really impressed about the MCS. So when's going to be the next class?
Well, I thought, Enrique, have you never been through my 2-day class?
No, I haven't.
Okay. Well, actually, the next class is next Thursday and Friday. I don't know if it's, yeah, I'm sure it's sold out. They're all sold out, but there's probably room where somebody doesn't show up. So, you know, let's touch base next week. There's probably going to be a free seat. I'm sure there almost always is.
Awesome. Awesome. Let's do that. Thank you, man.
And guys, I should take a minute to promote that. I do a free class, so it's andy.whiteside@XenTegra, XenTegra.com. I teach a free class like every other week that teaches Citrix Zen Desktop, whatever the latest version is. So I'd love to have you sit in and join that if you're on the phone here or you're watching the video later. All right, so these machines are back up. I'm just waiting on them to initialize and register themselves, and we'll be able to jump in and show that the Telnet client is now part of our image. So here's initialization happening. Give this another 20 seconds or so, and we'll be ready to log back in and see an updated image. Yeah, Theo, MCS is a pretty powerful technology, but it's taken a while for the rest of the story to come together. But now that it is, you know, I won't fight somebody over PBS because I grew up on it too. But the future is probably not PBS. Just this becomes too easy and too much becomes better. All right, so we got a registered machine. Let's go out here to our web browser again. Citrix receiver. Let me log out of this and back in just so I don't create my own mess. Number 2, I think it was. Where's it at? All right. Don't mess with my demo. It's been going too well. Let's see what's going on here. You know, I probably should go into here and change the name of that desktop so I don't confuse myself. Who knows, I could be launching the other one at this point. I think that should take care of it. All right, here it comes, I think. Yep, there it is. All right, so in theory, I come out here, I run a command prompt, I type in telnet, and it's not there. Let's make sure, let's see. Let's make sure I'm hitting the right one here. Nope, I'm not. So there you go. So there's my naming problem. So I hit the, that was funny. It actually turned on the other one. All right, so let's refresh this guy, make sure we hit the right desktop. There it is. So the awesome thing, the bad thing is I screwed up there, but the awesome thing is you saw real time how quickly I could recover, which is sometimes worth more than the initial. So what you saw there was it took a second or two to boot up that other VM on my Zen server. So let's do this, make sure we're on the right one. So there it is, my Nutanix and telnets, boom. So that's it. I've taken a Nutanix rig off the loading dock, racked it, stacked it, configured the cluster, built a Citrix environment, integrated with it, and even updated my image all in the course of about 3 hours while talking to you guys and going over a whole bunch of other stuff. So what do you think?
Great, man.
Impressive. Very impressive.
So guys, if there's nothing else, we'll kind of leave it at that. Again, I do have to highlight this because we do this all the time. We do it at least once a month, if not 3 or 4 times a month. We'll do it. If you guys want to do it on site, just let me know and I'll bring the gear and we'll do the demo for your team on site. We are a Nutanix partner. We do sell it. We resell it. So if you're interested in the concept you've seen here today, let us know. Again, it's XenTegra.com. let us know, because there's been a lot of times where I've demoed this stuff and then people say, hey, it was great. I went and bought it from CDW or somebody, which is fine. I don't want to act like we can't do it that way, but I'd love to get the opportunity to work with you guys. I am just a sales guy, right? We've got consultants on our team, but this is what I love to do. We, as a company, we love to teach and educate, and that's our sales motion. So if there's nothing else, I appreciate you guys joining. Anything else you guys want to talk through while we're all together? All right, thanks. All right, guys. Well, feel free to reach out to me, and if nothing else, I'll see you next time. Again, I do some training classes, NetScaler training classes, XenApps and Desktop. We now have an AppSense training class. There's so many things, I can't even keep up with all of them, but definitely reach out to me if you're interested in getting some more education or enablement type things going. And if nothing else, I will talk to you guys next time. Thank you for joining.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
See you guys.